Sherry, I'm glad you're here to take roll.
All right, and everyone, thanks again for bearing with us. We're just trying to make sure we get everybody in here as they transition from one meeting to the next.
And it's going to take me a minute to get the live stream switched over.
At least I'm not out of breath this time.
All right, who are we missing?
Sarah.
I don't see Sarah yet.
And I can see the current meeting live on YouTube now.
Don't see Sarah yet. We are live on YouTube at this time. So for those who are watching, just bear with us as we're waiting for all of our board members to make the transition from the closed session over to our meeting.
And Sherry, I just found the form for that I had run off on the closed minute meetings. So that's great. Makes my
Okay.
life simpler.
All right, thanks.
I'll send it to you later tonight. Hi, Tony.
Sorry, we're just waiting for our board chair to find her way into the meeting.
I did send a follow-up invite to make sure the right link is there.
Shelley, you're in standby.
Oh, there's Sarah. We'll let her in and we should be all set.
All right. Hello there.
Hi.
Are we all here?
I think we're
We're
good to
just
go and
waiting
we
for
are
a chair.
live.
Okay. Very good. Then let's get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. I call into session this regular school board business meeting of Stillwater Area Public Schools on June 11th, 2020. Due to the current federal and state emergency guidelines, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay safe and stay home, limiting person-to-person contact during the coronavirus. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking tonight. The coronavirus pandemic, this meeting is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota statutes 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. The board has determined that it is not feasible for at least one board member, the superintendent, or the district legal counsel to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular location due to the health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting via live stream on YouTube through a link on the district website. School board members wishing to speak have been asked to raise their hand and wait to be recognized. All votes will be conducted by roll call. Each school board member should wait until their name is called before voting and indicate by saying yes or no, and clearly using a thumbs up for a yes. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as possible. And with that, let's begin with a roll call, please. Sherry, are you there?
I am. Chair Stivlin,
Great. Here.
Vice Chair Pearson,
You're muted, Shelley.
Sorry, here.
Treasurer Riley,
Here.
Clerk Potacek,
Present.
Director Burns,
Here.
Director Pelletier,
Here.
Director Weisberg.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Very good. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda for tonight? Liz Weisberg motions. Shelley Pearson, is that a second?
Second. Yep.
Thank you. All in favor? Let's have a roll call vote again.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivlin,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote?
Thank you. All right. Next, it's the superintendent report. I'll turn it over to you.
All right,
Denise.
thank you. I have three things I'd like to share tonight with the community. The first is the Stillwater Area Public Schools commitment to equity. The events of the past 2 weeks in our communities and nation have provided a bitter reminder of the systemic racism that persists in our society. While there are no quick and easy solutions to this issue, we at Stillwater Area Public Schools recognize the responsibility we have to provide safe, welcoming, and engaging learning environments for all of our students. We condemn discrimination in any form, and we're committed to reconciling the gaps that have persisted in our system. We can and we will do better. Change is long overdue. For many years, our school district has been doing the work to train staff and create programs that value inclusion and diversity for our students, staff, and families. The list of our efforts is long, but our work is far from done. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. We've made progress in some areas, but significant achievement and opportunity gaps still exist in our district for many students, and families continue to feel oppressed, unwelcome, and unsupported in our schools. We know it takes more than talk to make change. We need to listen intently and act upon the voices of marginalized individuals and reflect deeply on our own biases. We need to offer steps to help our community build trust and move forward to dismantle the destructive culture of institutional racism and discrimination. To that end, we commit to the following. We invite our community to join us in honest and candid conversations about injustices in our system and share personal stories to help us learn and grow and improve together. We're expanding our training and professional development on institutional racism and culturally inclusive instruction. We will recruit, hire, and retain a diverse staff that more closely reflects our student population, including cultural background, physical abilities and disabilities, race, religion, sex, and sexual orientation. We'll identify and remove systems and barriers in our current policies, procedures, systems, and structures that limit opportunities for all of our students. We can't do this work alone. We ask that our students, family, and community members walk alongside us in finding solutions to eliminate our achievement and opportunity gaps. We will not stop until every one of our students feels safe, welcome, and successful. We invite you to join us on this journey. I'd also like to take a minute to recognize, many of you know that we typically have a retirement dinner for our families, and we've recognized a few of our retirees over the past couple of weeks, but I'd just like to share with you and read and recognize our retirees that you see up on the screen ahead of you and thank them for our dedication to our district. Cynthia Koenig from Afton, Deb Holland from Anderson, Kathy Ritzer, Anderson, Deanne Berg, district-wide, Sandra Weber, ECFC, Lane Belter, Lily Lake, Scott Nelson, Oakland Middle School, Sonia Esch, Rutherford, Phyllis Schultz, Rutherford, Sarah Damon, Stillwater Area High School, David Johnson, Stillwater Area High School, Kim Thompson, Stillwater Area High School, Sue Gilsdorf, Stillwater Middle School, Dee White, Stillwater Middle School, Jane Christopher, Stillwater Middle School, Margaret Schwartzbauer, ECFC, Julie Schultz, Oakland Middle School, Deborah Vogel, Brookview, Ruth Warbelow, Lake Elmo and Rutherford, and Dolores Wetstein, Rutherford. Again, thank you to all of our retirees for their commitment to our kids and our families. You will be missed, and we hope that you come back to see us and maybe help out once in a while in your retirement when you're missing kids and your colleagues. Thanks again. The final thing I'd like to comment on this evening is the first senior parade that we've ever had for our graduates. And I'd like to thank the cities of Oak Park Heights, Stillwater, and Bayport, and their mayors and emergency services for initiating and supporting the safety of our students and community by helping support this first ever parade. A huge thanks to Rob Bach and all the volunteers who came out to help to make this possible and to keep our students safe in this endeavor. It was so inspirational to see our graduates and their smiles and their families just celebrating the graduation in a different way during this COVID time in our lives. So thank you to everyone that was involved. And we heard many people say, can we do this every year? We'll have to see, because typically we hope that we have a regular graduation, but it was a great event for sure. So thank you to everyone who either participated or watched on the side. Thank you.
Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry about that. All right, let's move on. The next item on our agenda is the open forum. School board meetings will be held electronically until further notice. If you wish to speak at the school board, you will be able to do so at the start of the school board meeting during open forum. A sign up for open forum speakers is available online on the board webpage from 3 to 4 p.m. on the day of the board meeting to provide time for instructions to connect to the meeting to be sent to speakers. You may sign in only for yourself, not other individuals or groups. The order of speakers will be established on a first come, first served basis. Due to time limitations, we will limit the number of speakers to 15 for 3 minutes each. You will need the ability to join the meeting electronically, either by phone or online. You will receive instructions for joining the meeting 30 to 60 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Stillwater Area School District welcomes input from citizens as community involvement fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, the law prohibits for the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, speakers must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Carissa. Hi, Carissa.
Good evening.
And I'll let you go ahead and welcome in our first speaker.
All right, our first speaker this evening is Josiah Hill. It looks like he's just getting on, and our next speaker will be Christy Mack.
Okay, thank you.
Josiah, go ahead.
Thank you. Board Chair Stivlin, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Josiah Hill. I live at 1124 Macy Way here in Stillwater. I'm an English teacher here at Stillwater Area High School, and I've also served for the last 10 years as the president of the St. Croix Education Association. I'm a Stillwater Schools graduate, and my wife Emily and I are raising our 3 daughters here in Stillwater. Next fall, when our youngest goes to preschool, all 3 will be proud students in Stillwater schools. I want to begin by acknowledging the concerns that were courageously shared by many of our past and present students who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. All of this in the backdrop of the tragic murder of George Floyd and the events that ensued. We want all students to feel welcome, to feel safe, to feel supported, and to feel included in our schools and our communities. And if any, even one, are instead experiencing pain or injustice, we need to right those wrongs and do what it takes to grow and improve. I personally have come to recognize even more clearly and more intensely in the past week that I myself have much listening, learning, and developing to do. I can see now that at times I've come up short in the past, and I'm committed to addressing inequities and injustices, and I know Superintendent Pontrelli is as well, as she's shown over time in her role. Intense planning is currently underway within our union structure as well as at the district level to make certain that we as an organization address these concerns, that we grow and improve, and we ensure that we eliminate practices and structures that cause suffering and pain. I've heard it said recently that we're facing 2 pandemics together in real time: systematic racism and COVID-19. One is centuries old and one is new. For me, together, this is the greatest challenge that I've faced during my 20-year teaching career. And I'm deeply troubled that the board is looking to separate from our superintendent during these turbulent times. I have worked with 5 different superintendents during my 10 years in this role. Superintendent Pontrelli is the most open, receptive, and responsive of those I've worked with. Her sharp focus on students and learning supersedes all others, and recently earned her the overt support of more than 81% of my fellow educators in the SCEA. Let me assure you, this kind of support is far beyond rare. It's unheard of. It goes with the unanimous support of our principals, thousands of community members, and perhaps most importantly, student groups, including a group that recently and courageously clearly expressed this viewpoint. A clear change in leadership in the midst of these 2 monumental challenges will harm our students, our district, and our community for years to come. The stakes are far too high. I urge you to move forward together. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christy Mack.
Thousands of community members and perhaps
Christy, if you can turn down the TV in the background and then we're ready for you. Thank you.
Yep, got it. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, this is Christy Mack, and I live in Stillwater. I'm speaking tonight to address what Director Pelletier placed on her personal Facebook page, which has been circulating all over Facebook since last Friday. That would be implying that employee A, in regards to an action item on tonight's board meeting agenda, is our superintendent. First, I'm not understanding how it's appropriate for a board member to leak personnel matters on a personal Facebook page. I believe this is against board policy as well as disrespectful to fellow board members, the community, and said staff member she named. I sincerely hope that this is addressed. In addition to the above matter, I also hope that the signing of 2 amendments to the bus garage purchase agreement by our superintendent and Director Pelletier without board approval is addressed. These documents, as I'm sure you are all aware, significantly changed the terms to the original agreement, whereas taxpayer protections were waived and our ability to walk away unscathed was thrown to the wayside. Now we are roughly $8 million into this property, which is roughly $4.5 million more than was allotted for in the 2015 bond, and the property cannot be used for its intended purposes. The mismanagement of the bus garage is just one area of concern where serious mismanagement has occurred. The disregard to fellow board members and board policy is unacceptable. Lastly, if what Director Pelletier has inferred about employee A is true, it is time to separate. If our district's health is as much of a concern to you as it is to me, then you will agree that our district deserves a chance to heal. The divide in our community was created under the current administration's watch. Our district must have administration in place that understands and values accountability. You owe it to our kids, our staff, and our community. A reset like this will give some much needed space for all parties to pause and to start to visualize what it is they really want for our district. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Aston Osai, followed by Sandy Hayner. All right, Aston, you're all set.
All right. Good evening, Chair Stivlin, members of the board, and Superintendent Pontrelli. My name is Aston Osai, and I'm the superintendent of St. Louis Park Public Schools. I live at 4910 Valaker Avenue in St. Louis Park. This evening, on behalf of several other metro area school superintendents, I would like to express our support for the leadership of Superintendent Pontrelli. I personally understand the challenges of the role and recognize that as a superintendent, we make tough decisions on a daily basis while always centering the mission and strategic direction of our school districts. In Stillwater Public Schools, I know that you all have been working extremely hard to partner with students, families, and community to develop curious individuals who are active and engaged leaders in an ever-changing world by challenging all students as they travel along their personalized learning pathway. I appreciate your efforts to challenge all students. As you are aware, in the state of Minnesota, we have struggled with challenging all students, specifically as it relates to Black students. During this time in our country where we're battling the pandemics of COVID-19 and systemic racism, it gives me hope to see articles like the one I saw the other day in the Pioneer Press, where there were students and former students sharing the impact that their Superintendent Pontrelli, had on improving the inequities and interrupting the racism that they faced as students in Stillwater Public Schools. I want to commend Superintendent Pontrelli for her leadership in working to ensure that when Stillwater says all, that they really mean all. Superintendent Pontrelli, I appreciate your efforts to lift up your strategic objective of ensuring that all students will be seen, served, and supported. The work of Superintendent Pontrelli that has done in Stillwater is commendable, and it is reflective in the support from the staff and community. In the same article, it was noted that 2/3 of Stillwater teachers support her leadership. As a board, that should excite you, as she has done the necessary work to build trust with staff, and that trust will allow her to influence the behaviors of staff in a manner that will accelerate your progress in achieving the objectives of your strategic plan. As superintendents, we need to be able to make tough decisions that improve the educational experiences for our students. You should be proud and thankful to have a leader that is not afraid to make tough decisions, that supports the strategic direction of your district. Thank you for your time. And on behalf of the cohort of metro area superintendents that I am representing this evening, I would like to extend my appreciation to Superintendent Pontrelli for her leadership. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandy Hayner, followed by Dee Dee Armstrong. Sandy, if you can hear us, we're ready for you. Sandy, are you there?
Hi, yeah, sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sandy Hayner. I live in Stillwater, Minnesota. I'm just calling to say that if the rumor that board member Jen Pelletier started about employee A is actually the superintendent, that I very eagerly support a yes vote on the agenda item, separation agreement of employee A. With my remaining time, however, I'd like to read the compelling thoughts of a Stillwater parent, Bill Gillis, from a letter that he wrote to the board. And it reads as follows: dismiss employee A. Employee A is at best a mediocre administrator whose tenure has led to a stagnant academic achievement and declining financial health of the district. Employee A will not be remembered as an educator. She will be remembered as a political operative who so easily manipulated a school board by preying on their decency and creating intra-district rifts that will take decades to heal. Employee A has been stubbornly loyal to the board that hired her and insubordinate to the board that was elected to correct the mistakes. She is a political, I already said that, sorry. She skillfully evaded public scrutiny and early termination by taking advantage of employee privacy laws to silence the board and deny action on her removal. She did this by exploiting the board's desire for decorum and decency. Employee A packed the infrastructure committee from 30 to 90 members by taking advantage of Shelley Pearson's desire for an open and fair process. Employee A encouraged her subordinates to cut the board out, withhold information, and avoid proper oversight on a number of issues, the Lake Elmo bus terminal only being the latest of expensive blunders that could have been avoided with proper leadership. Employee A exploited a natural desire of Brookview parents to see their school improved and expanded and turned a mild disagreement over priorities, i.e., was Brookview expansion a top priority or one of a few high priorities, into a massive wide rift between the North and South that spurs only suspicion and conflict. Now, employee A, taking advantage of the nation's current situation, dares to claim on the most tortured of pretexts that her dismissal would be a vicious act of racism. Once again, to save her position, she would create a racial divide between the district's families. Every day that employee A is superintendent is another day for her to create conflict and division within the district. The day after she is removed will be the first day in a decades-long process to repair the racial animus, mend the geographic rivalries, and recover from the financial malfeasance that will be employee A's legacy in School District 834. That's my time. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dee Dee Armstrong, followed by Jeff Anderson.
Hi, everybody. It's Dee Dee, and I live in Afton. I guess the thing is that I appreciate all of you on the board. You put in a ton of hours and you work very hard at what you do, and you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And I want to thank you for what it is that you do. I don't agree with any single one of you 100% of the time. I've disagreed with each one of you on enough occasions that that we understand each other. What I want to call about is the separation agreement. And I don't know who employee A is. And I guess to me, it seems like there's a lot of rumors that were put out on Facebook by Director Pelletier. But what I do want to say is it's like a relationship. There was a dating relationship, then it turned into marriage, and it was all great. But now two parties have decided that they need to separate. And if there's an agreement to separate, we should just honor that separation agreement and say, okay, yes, we approve of you separating. And and then both parties can move on. And that's where I'm at with it. And I hope that we can all agree to the agreement that is before us. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Jeff Anderson, followed by Julie Grundeman. Hey, Jeff, if you're all set, we're ready.
Okay. My name is Jeff Anderson. I am a 41-year resident of the Stillwater community and have raised 5 kids in the public school system here. I speak today in support of the leadership of Employee A and the superintendent. And as a civil rights lawyer of 45 years, I'm acutely aware of the issues presented to all of us at this critical time and in times past. And this is the time for this board and this community to heal divisions and include and support those that speak in support of communities of color. The superintendent has done that. And I urge this board to be mindfully aware of the sensitive times in which we find ourselves. I have interviewed many of those students that are up there on the boulevard, speaking and holding signs in support of her. And the many others in this community in which I've lived and worked for 4 decades, and urge the board to reflect on what they thought might have been the best course and now choose the best course, and that is to support the leadership of this superintendent who has given voice to communities of color and respect to those students. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Julie Grundeman, followed by Matthew Cooper. Julie, you're muted, but we're ready for you as soon as you are set.
Hello, Julie, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, go ahead
Hi.
when you're ready.
All right, I see you now. My name is Julie Grundeman and I live in Stillwater. Good evening, Board Chair Stivland, Board Directors, Superintendent Pontrelli, and student board members. This district needs accountability. We cannot continue to move forward as an entire district if Director Pelletier's rumor is factual regarding Employee A. It's time to cut ties and try to find someone who can demonstrate positive leadership, not manipulations and machinations. Therefore, if Director Pelletier's rumor is true, I wholeheartedly support separation from Employee A. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Matthew Cooper. He'll be followed by Melanie Zeller. Matthew, if you can hear us, we're all set for you.
Can we listen to that tonight? The voices of children. Matt, Dr.
good.
Cooper,
Good
are
evening.
you good? Can you hear us? Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
Good evening, Superintendent Pontrelli and board members. I address my comments initially to the board. Each of you has been elected on an oath of integrity based on listening to, support, and representation of the students, faculty and educators, and the community. You have sworn to lead with fairness and equity and fiduciary responsibility. Students have spoken up in support of the initiatives and person of Superintendent Pontrelli. Your consistent response has been to tolerate and institutionalize racism and attempt to silence responsible students who endeavor to enlighten you. An overwhelming majority of our teachers have stepped up to support Superintendent Pontrelli. Our principals have unanimously expressed their support for her programs and for her person, something they have done repeatedly. A majority of our vocal community have expressed their support for Denise Pontrelli. And yet the majority of this board remain blinded by a desire for retribution by dismantling our school district at the most pressing cost to our students and their future. You have an opportunity yet to act for the best interests of our students and all relevant stakeholders by working with Superintendent Pontrelli. If you choose the alternative threatened separation with our superintendent, you will no longer be adequately described by some as ignorant or misguided. The only descriptors that would approximate to describing your actions will be an expression of pure malevolence and evil with total disregard for our students. In closing, comments to our superintendent. Thank you, Denise Pontrelli. What you have done, fought for, and suffered on our behalf has not gone unnoticed. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melanie Zoller, followed by Peggy Franklin.
No.
And Melanie, if you can turn down the sound behind you, please, and then we're ready for you.
Yep. Okay.
With total disregard for our students.
Oh dear. I want to finish the
Comments.
It's funny, there's a delay.
Thank you, Denise Pontrelli.
Melanie, we're all set for you?
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Melanie Zeller, Stillwater board members and Chair Stivland. It's the confidential information that board member Jennifer Pelletier posted that employee A is the superintendent, and I'm in full agreement of a separation agreement with her. We can no longer afford Superintendent Pontrelli. She's financially, morally, and emotionally bankrupt this school district. She has caused a divide between families, friends, and neighbors that may never heal. If we are to try to heal this district, we must get rid of her and get rid of her now. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peggy Franklin, and she'll be followed by Rosetta Peters. It looks like Peggy is just connecting with us. We can hear you now whenever you're ready, Peggy.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Just 1 second. We get out of the wind. Oh, okay. I am able to switch the camera. Oh, can you? Wait, I don't know if you're going yet. Ask. Is she good to go? I think there's some working.
Yep, we're all set.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. I'm Peggy Franklin from West Lakeland. I'm speaking today to address this message to all of the school board, Superintendent Pontrelli, and to everyone who played a part in organizing the Pony Pride graduation parade for the senior class of 2020. I think this is a testament to the potential of unity and healing in our district. It was a truly beautiful event, a special night for a special class, one that they or their families will ever forget. Hearing the people of Stillwater cheering for each and every single student using horns, banners, decorations, and shouts of congratulations brought a tear to many eyes, or at least it brought several tears to my eyes. Seeing all the spirited support, whether the parade goers knew the seniors or not, was the most unifying and Stillwateriest moment my family has ever experienced. Our experience in the Stillwater community has always been within the confines of an individual school, team, or club that our kids have been members of. This time, it was the whole community, celebrating together en route to the heart of the district, lovely downtown Stillwater. To those from Marine to Afton and all points in between, this was a spectacular show of solidarity, especially in these contentious times. While it was a wonderful way for the ponies to ride together into the future, it was also a little sad to save this moment for their very last day of their Stillwater school years. I propose that this event could be made even better by inviting kindergartners to lead the parade. This would be a powerful symbol of welcoming support and an indicator to the newest parents and their children that the Stillwater community is invested in all students, start to finish. My sincerest gratitude to everyone who brought this to life. I would also like to credit the tremendous efforts made to effect a personalized online graduation ceremony for the seniors. To have the principal, assistant superintendent, vice principal, student counselor, and a school board member to address my son and one other student individually and in real time was incredibly impressive and meaningful. That had to require staggering amounts of your time and energy. The students may not be aware of that, but they will be someday. I'm sure that they will be inspired by your efforts to pay it forward. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Peggy Franklin, and she'll be followed by Rosetta Peters.
I think that was Peggy Franklin.
I'm sorry.
Peggy.
I'm sorry. Rosetta Peters is our next speaker. She'll be followed by Jen Sterner. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Rosetta, we can hear you. If you're ready, you can go ahead and get started.
All right, so you can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening. Sunday night, I received an email from Denise Stevens of NAPAC with an urgent call to action for all Native American families in 834 to send letters of support to you on behalf of Superintendent Ponticelli. You all have that email along with my emotional response. I would like to add that I view this divisive action as yet another example of Ponticelli's egregious failures in the way she leads our district. Aside from Bold, the closing of 3 elementary schools, the tensions created surrounding Brookview, the bus terminal fiasco, over $200,000 of unapproved funds shifted to Oak Park for renovations after closing, the millions of mismanaged dollars, lack of transparency, failure to listen to the majority voice of the community, failure to include you, the board, on board decisions, etc. I find this email, this misuse and abuse of minority voices for political and personal gain to be reprehensible and representative of the tone-deaf, misguided, and divisive nature of our administration under Ponticelli's so-called leadership. COVID-19 has forced us all to slow down, sit back and reflect upon our lives. It has been a time of global introspection and healing for the earth, given us a moment to consider how we wish to live and move forward. The tragic murder of George Floyd has also demanded us to pause and look inward how it is we wish to move forward as individuals, communities, and as a nation, as we come to terms and accept realities like white privilege, systemic and systematic racism, and try to navigate collectively how we can and will do better as individuals and as a school district to promote and foster an equitable environment for all students. I'm sure most of you have seen the Twitter feed of many of our BIPOC students calling out their experiences of racism within our schools. And as they pointed out the failures within our district by our administration, which is currently led by Ponticelli. I hope we are all listening, and I mean really listening, actually hearing these kids without feeling the need to undermine their hurt by shoveling bandwagon buzzwords like equity and equality down their throats when clearly it directly contradicts their experiences. And they are just buzzwords if we are without action to make them meaningful. We're at a crucial crossroads, both as a nation and as a school district. Where do we go from here? How do we move forward? A great start would be ripping the proverbial Band-Aid off that is Denise Pontrelli's contract, exposing the wounds her leadership has inflicted and allowing those wounds to get some much needed fresh air, to breathe, to heal. The scars will be visible for years to come, but I know without a doubt, separating ourselves from her is the only way our communities can and will effectively begin the healing process. And we have much work to do. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Jen Sterner, and she'll be followed by Carolyn Ziske. Hi, Jen, we are ready for you.
Thanks. Good evening. My name is Jen Sterner, and I live on Sunset Bay in Woodbury. I'm a Brookview parent, co-president of the Brookview Elementary PTA, and have been a licensed educator since 2008. After reviewing tonight's agenda, I have grave concerns that Chair Stivland is introducing another separation agreement with the second top administrator during this pandemic. This irresponsible act would leave staff unsupported and vulnerable going into an already turbulent school year. I find this difficult to understand considering all building principals and more than 80% of union teachers have publicly stated their desire to stay the course. As board members, you set a goal on June 27, 2019 to increase community trust and engagement. You created this goal and you agreed on its importance. By moving forward with the separation, you're leaving the district in an extremely difficult spot. I'm sure you've considered that proper protocol for recruiting a high quality replacement for a critical position like superintendent should have started months ago. By this point in the game, most highly qualified candidates will have already signed contracts for the upcoming school year. It's very hard to increase trust when your decisions as a board undermine the very foundations of our district by eliminating the last of our district leaders during a crisis without a plan to fill the void. Next, just moments ago, you reminded us that you welcome input from citizens as community involvement fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. To me, that means that you've come into this meeting with a flexible, open mindset that's willing to consider alternative perspectives. It does not mean that you came in tonight with your mind already made up because you're blindly following your campaign promises. You tell us our voice matters, yet you continue to ignore impassioned pleas made in this space. Please listen, act, and live by what you continue to say to us and make it more than just lip service. Finally, your very own board handbook states that it's your moral and ethical responsibility to function impartially to assure the greatest good to the greatest number at all times. Does eliminating leadership that is trusted and respected by staff and community serve the greatest good or serve your own political agenda? There's a collective call from our district that we cannot move forward by looking back. Denise Pontrelli has spent her short tenure investing heavily in equity, social emotional learning, mental health, data-driven academic instruction and achievement, and continuously supporting the teachers and staff that surround her. They've testified to her remarkable leadership and the community is listening. As of today, nearly 3,000 community members have signed a petition saying we stand in solidarity with Pontrelli. You've offered no clear educational necessity as to why this decision would be best for our district's future at this moment, or why it would warrant the at least $500,000 price tag that comes with it. So tonight, I ask you to allow Superintendent Pontrelli to finish the last year of her contract. If you're unsatisfied with her performance, build your case and present a transparent, persuasive argument to the community for not renewing her contract beyond this year. This act would demonstrate that you do deeply care about and are listening to the community you serve, that you're working to increase community trust and engagement, and that you respect the responsibility as elected members to impartially serve the greatest good to the greatest number at all times. Please understand that the repercussions of this decision at this moment in time will only serve to deepen the divide and ultimately hurt the staff, students, and communities you pledged to serve. The time is now, our students are watching, and it's up to each of you to do the next right thing.
Our next speaker is Carolyn Ziske, and she'll be followed by Michelle DeZiel. Carolyn, we're ready when you are.
Thank you. Let me just switch my screen. Good evening, Board Chair Stivland, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board. My name is Caroline Ziske, and I'm a member of the leadership team serving students and families of 834. Earlier today, I sent you the following letter. Our district is recognized time and again, both locally and nationally, for innovation and a focus on learning. This doesn't happen by accident. Innovation in education means doing what is needed to meet the needs of each student. Innovation is about creating new structures and systems to meet kids where they're at right now and focus on developing each student's potential and aspirations for their lives beyond our E21 educational system. It also means doing this while being fiscally responsible. Learning is the process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behavior, skills, values, and preferences. To do both of these well requires strong leadership. Strong leaders develop people and help others to meet their full potential. Our district is facing a reopening during an international pandemic and national crisis of racial injustices that demands continuity of leadership and the opportunity to design and innovate educational approaches that meet the needs of all students. We need to work together in partnership with our leaders, teachers, students, and community to create innovative solutions to the challenges ahead. Stable leadership is needed now more than ever. Understanding that the limits of our organization will be tested as we navigate a pandemic and address systemic racism. It is critical that we have a leader that is knowledgeable of our greatest weaknesses and challenges. Stable leadership during a time of chaos provides an organization with the focus and agility to move quickly and efficiently towards a cohesive outcome. Denise Pontrelli provides this leadership for our staff, students, and community. Just last week, Superintendent Pontrelli met with her leadership team to share her vision for the fall and began leading us in this very complex and important planning, keeping kids at the heart of our work. She began to lay out a plan to fulfill district's mission during a time of uncertainty and chaos. Superintendent Pontrelli has a structure to guide us as we redesign fall, which includes listening to our community, our staff, and our students to move forward with our district mission. Even with a clear plan, this is a monumental undertaking that requires all hands on deck. So I ask you, how will we be ready for our students in August without a superintendent and potentially without an assistant superintendent and executive director of operations and finance to lead this essential work? Please provide us with stable leadership we need to best support students. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle DeZiel, followed by Jim Franklin. Michelle, we're all set for you.
Yes.
You can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Michelle DeZiel, followed by Jim Franklin.
Okay. So good evening, Superintendent Pontrelli, Chair Stivlin, and members of the board. My name is Michelle DeZiel. My address is 2783 Legion Avenue North, Lake Elmo, Minnesota. I am a Black woman. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay.
You can go ahead when you're ready.
Oh,
Michelle,
okay.
you're on a delay, I think, so we can hear you. Just if turn down what you have in the background would be great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
You can go ahead and continue, Michelle.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Good evening, Superintendent Pontrelli, Chair Stivlin, members of the board. My name is Michelle DeZiel. My address is 2783 Legion Avenue North, Lake Elmo, Minnesota. I am a Black woman who supports Superintendent Pontrelli. I have 2 children who graduated from Stillwater Area High School. Go Ponies. I have to say, each time I attend board meetings, I'm impressed with the eloquence of communication and critical thinking skills of Stillwater Area High School alumni and students. I have confidence that this generation will make America great. I think that it is imperative that we listen and learn from them. Before COVID-19, I heard Asian, Native American, Latinx, and white students tell you about their appreciation of Superintendent Pontrelli's commitment to creating and sustaining an equitable learning environment for students. Just recently, Black alumni and students wrote a letter to you about their support for Superintendent Pontrelli. In their letter, they thoughtfully outlined the reasons to why Superintendent Pontrelli should not be separated from the community, who respects her, appreciates her, and values her leadership. It would be a disservice if that were to happen. We are in a moment of time where we as people could move forward or backwards. In the history of Stillwater area schools, will you be remembered for listening to and valuing students' insight? Do not separate Superintendent Pontrelli from our beloved community. Thank you.
And our final speaker for this evening is Jim Franklin. Hi, Jim. We are all set for you whenever you're ready.
Okay, hi, how are you doing? Good evening, Chair Stivlin. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Stivlin, board members, and Superintendent Pontrelli, and hi, MC Carissa. Tonight, you are voting on the removal of district superintendent during a pandemic with no plan forward identified. This separation was discussed publicly in July, yet is suddenly considered private data. There is an effort to have the public believe this is something that is mutual, but anyone paying attention the last year and a half knows this is being forced on our superintendent. I want to take a minute to review the board majority's missed opportunities in the last year and a half. Missed opportunities to serve students and aid our talented staff. You could have started your tenure by working together as a board with the superintendent and admin, but instead chose to meet with district council without full board knowledge, thus violating board policy. You could have accepted a generous grant of $20,000 to mediate your differences, but you made excuses and twice refused. You could have done your job and conducted a performance evaluation of the superintendent, but you failed to. Instead, you blamed the superintendent for exercising her legal right to have the review in public. Sarah, are you looking? Are you listening? Can you hear me, Sarah? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You could have accepted an invitation extended to you twice by the district's first Black Student Council co-presidents to attend equity leadership training. 4 of you made the choice to not accept. You could have added more learning space to an overcrowded Brookview Elementary. Taxpayers would have still received money back on the school taxes, but you chose not to, despite the immediate recommendations of your facility committee. You could have altered the boundaries to address the overcrowding at the most diverse schools, but you chose not to, saying you didn't have an appetite for doing that this year. You could have asked your spouses to refrain from negative social media posting about administrators and employees of the school district that you govern. It would be the normal, respectable thing to do, but instead you allowed this in order to promote distrust and community division. You could have treated administration in a respectful manner, but you chose not to. Now you have taxpayer money spent for defensive lawsuits and hostile workplace environments. You could demonstrate transparency in your actions, but you choose to isolate the minority board members and operate outside the public eye. You could listen to the experts that you hire, but you choose to know better. At the expense to taxpayers, you hired a professional transportation consultant only to ignore every recommendation that he made. I would expect that the open forum tonight might be stacked by certain people who do not speak in favor of the superintendent and seek to damage the reputation of minority board members. This would fit in with your established game plan, but I would encourage you to take a look at yourself and community emails. You can still listen to the overwhelming majority of teachers. You can still listen to every principal. You can still listen to the students who support the superintendent and her progress in much needed equity work. You can still listen to the majority of citizens who support the superintendent. You are not the victim in this situation. You are the orchestrators. You're 100% responsible for the results of your decision tonight. If you cannot answer specifically why this decision to remove the superintendent during a pandemic at great taxpayer expense helps staff and students, you should vote no on tonight's action. Thank you for your time.
That was our final speaker of the evening.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have a lot of them tonight, so bear with me. I'm going to read through them first, and then I'll ask for a motion. Item A, the minutes of May 28th, 2020 business meeting. Item B, the disbursement register, May 30th to June 12th. Item C, the human resources personnel report. Item D, the 2020 District 834 census. E, the JPA Matamidi Nutrition Services contract. F, the Northeast Metro 916 ECFE Nutrition Services contract. G, the Pancalo 916 Nutrition Services contract. H, the St. Croix Catholic Schools Nutrition Services contract. I, the Skyward Student Information System Finance. J, the Northeast Metro 916 Long-Term Facilities Maintenance Levy. And K, the City of Oak Park Heights Parking Permission. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, and I gotta, let's see. Sorry, I at the moment, I cannot see everybody, so I'm gonna have to figure this out.
Up in the corner, or speaker view, gallery view.
There we go. Thank you. Got it figured out. All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Director Riley, and do we have a second?
A second.
Director Pierce. Okay, thank you, Director Pearson. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda at this time? Director Burns?
I'd like to pull item K, the City of Oak Park
Okay.
Heights parking permission.
Okay, and Director Potacek?
You're on mute, Mike.
You're on mute. Mike, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
Hope you guys, so you wouldn't hear me coughing.
There we go.
Okay, what I would like to do is pull B, C, and J.
Okay. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? Okay, so I did it out of order once again. I keep doing this wrong. We have a motion to approve all of them. We're just gonna amend the motion at this time. Instead of approving all of the consent agenda as it stands, we're going to make an amendment to approve A, D, E, F, G, H, and I. I'm making an amendment to the motion to approve those items. Can I get a second, please? All right, let's vote on the amended list of the consent, and then we'll go through the items we pulled. Sherry, can we do a roll call?
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a 7-0 vote.
All right, thank you very much, Sherry. Let's start with, we'll just go in alphabetical order. Who was the one who pulled B? Let's start with B. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
A couple things, and these have to do with disbursements, and I'll give you the page number, and then I'll give you the item and the amount. And I've also talked about these with John Tyne. He and I've had a couple of conversations. So the first one is on page 9, and it has to do with the Peterson Companies Incorporated, and it has to do with the bus facility. And there was an item there for $147,940. And what I found out is that when they did their project last summer and fall was approaching, they didn't have enough time to do the sealant. And so what the district did was to hold back the larger amount of money. And so this larger amount of money, the sealant work now having been completed, that's why it shows up in this disbursement. And I think John is probably listened. John, did I get that straight?
Yes, I'm listening. I don't know if you can hear me. I've been the video. I'm not there. Probably my best side right now, but I'm there. So, yeah.
I think it's accurate though, John.
Yes, it is absolutely accurate.
Okay.
Oh, there I am.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
The second item that I want to talk about a little bit, very briefly, is on page 11. It caught my eye, and it was to an item that was labeled CST Minnesota. And the item was actually a total of 6 items, all to the same vendor or firm. And it was for $18,453. And what that one amounted to, that was individualized, for the most part, transportation for kids with special needs to various parts of our district. An example would be Pankalo. Is that correct, John?
That's correct. And that used to be the Ties and then Watts. Before that, you probably remember those 2 organizations, and now they're called CSTMN.
Yeah. And then the third item had to do with page 15, and that was Hazel Reinhardt. And this was a bill for $10,250, which was the final payment of approximately $25,000. And I think my colleagues on the board would be glad to know that, yes, that was the final, and $3,500 of that was set aside for a future work session that she could come in and be part of. Did I get that right, John?
The total cost was $13,750.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
And the next meeting that you have with Hazel is included in that payment. So you're covered. So when she comes back, keep her all night.
Thank you. And then the very last item has to do with OJ Equipment LLC, and it's dated 5/27, and that was for a fuel dispenser, and that was for the new bus garage, and it's been installed, and I believe the price is $43,273.
That's correct. And if you had a question about that, Tony, I think, is online if you needed the detail, but it's for the dispenser. The one that they used at the old Stagecoach remained there.
Okay. Tony, anything you want to add to that?
I don't know if he's, hello, Tony. I've never really seen Tony, so I'm really kind of anxious that he comes back on. I've talked to him many times.
Yes. The dispensing equipment is correct, and it's for actually 2 dispensers. One was for the gas and one for diesel fuel. And as part of the Stagecoach property, we had to keep the current, or the dispensing equipment that was there, part of that property.
And that's going to be linked to a report that's coming up later. in terms of what we're doing with the buses. Am I correct?
A little bit. I can talk about that. Yes, the Stagecoach property. Yeah.
Yes.
If that's the desire of the board, yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Thank you. So those were my questions. I don't know if anybody else has questions as far as disbursements. Thank you both. And I would
Anybody else
move-
have questions?
Yeah.
Director, wait, hold on one second. Director Weisberg?
Yeah, is that the last expenses that we're gonna have for the bus garage? Because my understanding was, we were gonna not have any more expenses for the bus garage without notifying the board.
As far as I know, I think that expense took place earlier, Director Weisberg. So I'd have to ask Tony exactly when that was put in, when the dispenser was put in. I think that was a payment and it had a previous contract. So it would have been previous. Are you there, Tony?
Yes, I am. The dispensers were installed like in early February, and we're just paying for it now. And that was,
So-
the agreement was in late November that we had agreed to purchase them.
We should be done at this point. That should be our last bill.
We still have a final retainage bill to Peterson Companies
Which is how
for the
much?
retainage. Around $50,000.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, did you also pull item C? We could discuss those and then.
Yes.
Would you want to vote on those
No,
individually?
no,
Should we vote on?
No, I think we can do it. My question on human resources, and I thought it was appropriate, is at the last board meeting, we spent an awful lot of time talking about the assistant superintendent position. And I was wondering if, because I think the closing date is closing up. And I was curious just to the number of applicants who might have been found for that position. I heard a number, but it was very unofficial, but I thought it was very encouraging in terms of the number of applicants. So I think Kathy's there. Maybe she knows.
Good evening.
Kathy, are you there? Okay.
Yep, you can go ahead, Denise.
I was just going to share, and maybe it's, I know that they're dwindling in a couple of more. I think we're at about 12 or 13. Is that accurate, Kathy?
Submitted applications, correct?
Submitted, right. And, we're happy to see that, obviously. Some other districts, South Washington next to us also has an assistant superintendent open, similar timeline. They are at 35 plus applicants. So we'd love to have more before tomorrow.
And tomorrow's the last date, Denise.
Is that accurate, Kathy?
Yes, it closes tomorrow at the end of the day.
Thank you.
All right.
That's all I have on B and C. And so
Okay,
if
can I
it's
get
appropriate,
let's take these, let's have a motion to approve item B and C at this time. Go ahead, Mike.
I would so
Mike
move
is
that
making a motion?
we adopt B and C or approve B and C.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Director Pearson, any other questions, concerns? Okay, let's have a vote on just B and C.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potachik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to J.
That's me as well. And that's the
Okay.
last one under consent. And this one has to do with Northeast Metro 916 long-term facility maintenance levy. And what's important to know about this, and because I was part of 916 for a long time as a board member and as a chair, is that they do not have power to levy, to get increased funding, they have to come to the 14 districts, and the 14 districts have to approve this unanimously. And later on tonight, we're going to hear more about the long-term facilities maintenance, our 10-year plan. And this would be comparable to what they have in 916. But in this particular case, what we're looking at is for the entire 14 schools, the amount is $141,000, I believe. John, is that accurate?
I think it's around there. I thought it was a little bit more, 170.
Oh, okay.
70,
You would
but
know better than I do.
well,
And,
not necessarily, but I think
and-
that's right.
and what's the portion, John, for our district and what it would cost our taxpayers? I think it's an extreme-
$10,984 and odd change. So it's relatively inexpensive to each individual taxpayer. It would be pennies.
Yeah. And if you divide it by 10 months, that's even
Yeah.
smaller.
Even smaller. Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
But I think it's important for board members to know how those things are funded at 916. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on J? All right, then I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and discuss K as well, and then we'll vote on both J and K together. So Mark, you pulled that. Would you like to discuss that?
Sure, thank you. And my question may have been answered already in the previous discussion here, but I guess what I first wanted to do is express appreciation to the City of Oak Park for responding to our inquiry about parking our school buses at the high school temporarily over the summer. And the City of Oak Park was apparently responsive to that and agreed to that. So I do want to send out our appreciation for that. And then the question was because the period of time, the temporary period of time that was given authorization from the City of Oak Park expires July 1. And apparently the City of Lake Elmo has given us an extension of time. So the buses that are currently at the Lake Elmo facility can be there until June 30th. So my question was, what's the status? And it sounds like, John, that maybe the board is going to hear more, is going to learn more about that in the relatively near future.
Well, first of all, I apologize for not getting back to you sooner. That is totally unacceptable. And again, my apologies for that. Just so you know that the agreement with the city of Oak Park Heights will allow us to park buses there. At the time we made the request, we thought there were going to be a number of buses that were going to need to be placed there. Then Lake Elmo gave us some leeway, and the current vendor who did not get the new bid has moved a number of buses over to their Montemedi site where they can service them and take care of them. We only have a few buses that are being used right now, and they're to provide for our food service program. And so we should be covered very nicely. And we hope to have our Stagecoach property in line for our new vendor when that happens too, which we could talk about later.
Sure. Okay.
Does
That's
that
all
help?
I had. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you again. I'm sorry.
That's great. I'm glad you pulled that. We're learning more and more about getting the bus garage update all the time. So this is great. All right, so we need a motion then to approve J and K. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
All right, Director Riley, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Director Burns? Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's have a vote for approval of items J and K. Oh, did you
Director
have
Burns?
something, Tina?
I guess I just wanted to mention that that John does bring these up at our finance committee meetings that are open to everybody. So we do have ongoing discussion of things that are going on, and everybody's welcome to join when you see them posted. That's it.
Awesome. Plug for finance meeting. Okay, thank you. All right, sorry about that, Sherry. Let's start over.
All right, Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
All right. Sorry, I just had a little delay. Are we good?
Yep, a
Hello?
unanimous vote.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our reports tonight. Item A, the distance learning COVID update with Superintendent Pontrelli.
All right, thank you very much. We have prepared for the school board and community a district-wide update of our response to COVID-19. And our intent with that is to keep the community and board updated and abreast of the things that are happening to prepare for the summer learning and learning that will happen next August. First of all, we'd like to share with you that we have received funding from the CARES Act. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, that's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And for Stillwater area schools, we're looking at about $500,000. And the funding for this is to be used for various identified needs. The first is meeting the needs of historically underserved populations. Some of the conversations we've had with that is using possibly liaisons to connect with our families. We also are looking at mental health services and supports. You know that we've had a really strong reputation for supporting our students and family in the past, and we'll continue to partner with Youth Services Bureau and Family Means to identify the students and families that need that support. We've had several board meetings, and I know that John Perry has come to the Finance and Operations Working Group to talk about technology and access, and we'll need to identify and continue to work on that, as we know that some of our students and families had devices that were on the edge of extinction this last spring, and so we'll need to make sure that they have the appropriate materials. We know that cleaning supplies and materials will be important as we bring students back in to make sure that everybody is safe and that our staff are safe while they work with our students. And then finally, summer learning and supplemental after-school programs is another area where the funding can be used. So you can see that we have a nice chunk of money coming our way, but there are specific places that it can and cannot be used. Summer programming, just quickly, distance learning continues for qualifying students. Summer Success starts July 13th through the 30th for our elementary students. And we have 240 plus students this year, which is an increase from last year. So we're happy to see that. We also have credit recovery for our secondary students and an extended year program July 6th through the 23rd for special education. Many people have asked us about the summer enrichment and athletics. They're excited to get back into the pack, and the community education programs will reopen for youth and adult enrichment. We also will be opening the Pony Activity Center, and for all of these programs, it's important to note that we're modifying them to ensure the safety of our participants and the staff who are providing those programs. If you'd like specifics, you can see at the bottom of the slide to visit stillwaterschools.org/summerce, and you can find out all of the details for those programs and the way that we're keeping families and students safe. We thought it'd be important to share with you the timeline for summer success planning. And if you can see on the right-hand side, it's taken us about 7 weeks of planning for 3 weeks of learning. And this is important to note as the district prepares for what the fall will look like for our students and families. If you can look on the left-hand side, it gives you an idea of what the leadership team has done and the steps that they've taken to prepare for our summer classes for our students, knowing that we need to be ready for July 13th through the 30th. And I won't read through those line by line because you can all do that, but I think it is important for you to see the detail and the work that goes into preparing for this time. So it'll be very important as we look for August that we get ahead of the game to be able to do that planning for our students at the end of August. Food support, we continue to have free meals throughout the summer. Weekly distribution on Mondays will end or go through the end of June at 9 locations. For the community, we had 14 locations and have cut that down now. We also will be looking to share details in July and August about the meal distribution online as we get more information from the government about what that might look like. And we'd also like to note that our families can have $325 per child who qualify for free or reduced price school meals to help pay for groceries. All of this information is online at stillwaterschools.org/freemeals20. Planning underway for fall. We've had conversations with the board and the community, and you know that we're waiting more direction from the Department of Education, but we're considering a hybrid blended learning opportunity, distance learning, and traditional learning. And for that, you know, we right now think that it's going to be a hybrid blended learning of some type. When you look at the social distancing that's currently being required and look that we have 2,800 students in our high school alone, we'll have to do some creative things with our scheduling and how we serve kids next year. One of the things that you'll be hearing, and I'm going to ask Rachel Larson to chime in just a minute, is to share a little bit with you about the needs for professional development. This was a second action item or a second report, but we thought it would fit nicely in here. And so we'll include it and share that with you in just a couple of minutes. We do know, though, that our staff needs professional development over the summer so they can really feel comfortable delivering this hybrid over the summer and have time to really think and reflect about how they'll engage with students and make sure that the rigor and support is there for all of our students. Also, we'd like the curriculum writing to begin in July so that we're ready to support all the scenarios to the left for next school year. The support for teachers, I'm going to have Rachel Larson jump in here and share a little bit about the work that they've been doing to help plan for the different variables that we have coming up at the end of August. So Rachel, if you're available, I'll have you jump in.
Thank you, Superintendent Pontrelli. Can you hear me?
It's a little bit quiet.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good evening, Board Chair Stivlin, Superintendent Pontrelli, members of the board. We are here tonight to discuss the support for teachers that we'd like to offer in this unique time. But before we do that, on behalf of the Learning and Innovation Department, would just like to extend our sincerest appreciation and gratitude for the incredible hard work that all of our staff did in taking care of our students and families this past spring. And we provided the staff with a survey on their professional development needs, and we're going to provide another survey. And we're also looking at the results from the student survey and the parent survey. And so as we look and bring that all together, we know that we must continue to do our very best to take care of our caretakers, our teachers and our staff. So you've received in the board packet already a request for additional funds for COVID-19 professional development and curriculum planning. And this request would provide every staff, teaching staff that's a part of the SCEA with 4 days of optional professional development and curriculum planning that they could participate in July and August. The importance of this timeline is that typically we bring staff back for back to school workshop week the week before school starts. So that timeline is August 24th would be when our staff normally return, and we start on August 31st. As Superintendent Pontrelli pointed out, when we want to plan for hybrid, blended and remote learning opportunities, we need a lot more time with our staff to prepare them for those environments. So the 4 days would be offered 2 on professional development and 2 on curriculum and assessment planning. And this would be a collaborative effort. We would bring in our Learning and Innovation Department, technology integration specialists, instructional coaches, our teacher leaders, and principals. And we would all come together to make sure that we are meeting the needs and providing key practices in blended and online remote learning for our staff and serving our students and families. So this is a request, and we will be asking for formal approval at the June 25th school board meeting. But important note is that this is a one-time request of $386,958. That would be the max amount of money we would need to support these 4 days. That would be if all staff would participate. I'd also like to highlight that this request is in addition to the COVID-19 funds you've already supported and approved for other opportunities for us to support district-wide facilities operations and planning and technology. So this is a one-time additional request, and we will be asking for formal approval at the June 25th board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Larson. Board members, do you have a couple questions before we let her go, just so we can get a little bit more detail? Director Riley?
Hi, can you, so I'm curious on the budget. I know we haven't spent everything from the initial COVID allocation that we had given. I believe $450,000 is what we allotted, and I don't think we spent very much of that at all as of yet. Why above and beyond, and why not including that amount? And is this come out of the curriculum budget as well? I'm just want to, I guess I'm not quite clear as to where the money is coming from.
Sure, I can speak to that, Director Riley. You are correct. And by the end of next week, we should have a fairly good idea of all of the costs that were set aside from the board for the $450,000. And I do believe that some of that will be able to go towards this. We just won't know till all our expenses come in towards the end of the month. So we do anticipate that. We do not have money set aside in curriculum and instruction or professional development to cover this amount.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll get you that information before the 25th.
Thank you.
Director Potacek?
Yeah, I'm just curious at this point, and maybe that's coming when it becomes a further report or an action item. The bulk of the money, it's basically 386,000 or so. Is that for salaries?
That actually is not salary per se, but it falls under Appendix B in the SCEA contract, and it's under supplemental in-service work. So whenever we bring staff together for professional development outside the contract year, we work with the SCEA, and Josiah Hill and I have already had this conversation, and that rate of pay is $23.37, but then we have FICA and other pieces we add on. So it turns out to be $27.06 per hour for staff. So that is how we come to that amount.
There's one additional thing that I wanted to share that I forgot during the summer programming. Two people have given a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last few weeks to make sure that all this happens for our students by July with the restrictions that they've had for COVID. And I'd just like to thank Deb Van Cly and Eric Anderson for their work for summer school success, making sure that that is ready to go. Mary Tichu for working with our secondary students, making sure credit recovery is up and going. And then our special education staff, Paul Lee, Caroline Ziske, and Caitlin Willis, and helping, and our ECFC staff, making sure that we have programs ready for our kids this summer. And they've really been doing a great job to make sure that families are communicated well with what's happening and that they have everything in place to have a successful summer experience.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the in-service training, the professional development time this summer? Or anything else, I guess, relating to COVID? All right. Very good. Oh, go ahead, Director Pelletier.
I just wanted to take a minute, Denise. You mentioned some staff there, and I just wanted to reiterate the sentiment that I've heard you say multiple times already. I just want to thank our staff for adapting and working so hard, always putting our students first and our families and our kids at the center of every single thing you do. And I'm most proud of how hard you work and adapt and always keep focused on what matters most, which is our kids. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. So I think that takes care of both items A and B.
Correct.
So we're going to move. Thank you. Thank you, Director Larson.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to report item C, that is the OPEB, the other post-employment employee benefits. And I will turn it over to John Tyne. If he's there.
He's there, just bear with
I'm
him a
there.
second as there we
How's
go.
this? There we go.
There we
This
go.
is good.
Hi.
Hello.
You have the
Um,
floor.
First of all, thank you. Thank you, Board Chair. The post employee benefit levy is used to pay benefits for employees who have retired from the district. That's a separate fund that's set aside. Each year, the board is asked to levy an amount. The fund was originally started with a sale of bonds. Those bonds have been paid off. Each year, we make a presentation to say, this is what we think we are going to need to keep the fund viable and to make sure that we meet the needs or our commitment to our previous employees. This year, we're recommending that $800,000 be levied. And in your packet, if you take a look, you'll notice that the cost of that is really going to be less this year than the previous year. There'll be a reduction to the taxpayer. Also, when you approve this, if you do down the road, that will go into the levy system. And the department will take a look, just as they do with the debt service payments, to make sure that we don't over levy. And last year, what they did was the department lowered our levy by about $100,000. And I look forward to probably doing that, having the same thing happen again this year. One of the reasons I would say that you should make this levy is because you want to make sure that our levies remain relatively even or level, and maybe even decrease a little. Because down the road, you may be faced with going out for another levy, and that might give you some room to move with this levy down the road. But we want to make sure that we're able to meet our commitments. There's a printout that shows how it would affect each individual house, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. And I use 300,000 as an average on a house, and they also have commercial property included in that. So we'll bring that back to you on June 25th for action. And if you have any questions now or down the road, I'd be happy to address those if possible.
Are there any, thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Director Potacek.
Yes, it seems to me, John, that typically the most fundamental question here will be, and that's not tonight, but that's coming, is does the board want to approve a non-voter approved levy to help fund this? Is that what we're likely to see?
Yes, I think that's it. But I think also the board has made a commitment to these benefits. And so the idea would be, if this is not approved, you're going to be faced with probably a double levy down the road, which really causes heartburn for taxpayers, because instead of having a reduction in their homeowners' tax bill, there's going to be a reduction one year and then a large increase the next year. And what we want to do is make sure that it's stable. So
I think what you're saying, and usually I've had it explained, is to avoid peaks and valleys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at all? I think one of the ways I think about this, though, as well, is that we have a trust fund, or we have this set aside money that is designed to be paying these benefits. And the problem is that we don't, the amount that's in that fund will not be enough over time to serve the need all the way through. So if we spend it down too quickly, then we'll be stuck with trying to figure out a solution at the future.
Right.
So I think every year we sort of take the pulse of where we're at and
Right.
decide how best to make those
Right.
payments.
Um, yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
I can't say it any
All
better.
right. Well, if any if anybody has any other questions they think of maybe later, we can talk about it between now and then. But as you said, the action item will be at our next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. The next item on our agenda is the long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan. And I think that is also you, John. So we'll just
Yes.
keep it rolling.
And I'm excited to have Tony join me. There he is.
Yes, here I am.
That's Tony. Hello, Tony. Nice to see
Wow.
you in
Hi, Tony.
person. It's the real McCoy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to say, I would be very arrogant if I gave the impression that I was an expert in the 10-year plan. The real expert is Tony. Tony lives and breathes this district, and he knows where every yard of carpet is laid and every splash of paint goes. So I've asked him to join us tonight so he would be able to answer any questions that you have. And I know these are just estimates by Tony, and he's really done a very good job. When he's done talking, I do have an interesting comment that I just found out today that might be very beneficial to the district also. So if it's okay with you, Board Chair, I'll turn it over to Tony. And then Tony, if there are any questions, I'm going to let you answer them because I won't be able to. There you go.
All right. And again, this is the 10-year long-term facilities maintenance plan, but it is just for this up and coming fiscal year 22, payable 21, if that's correct, John, I do believe. And I have compiled a list of projects that, and I don't know how you want to go through them, but I don't know if you want to do line by line or school by school or how it's compiled. It does also include the health and safety portion, which has been in the past, which is hazardous waste, environmental, health and safety management, asbestos removal, fire safety, and indoor air quality.
Well, you think about that. One thing I'd like to, excuse me, Tony, I'd like to mention is
No
that
problem.
these are estimates by Tony. He does a really good job of doing that. And if anything, he estimates on the high side. And we've always had a surplus that we've carried over. And when dealing with the Department of Ed today, two of our stellar employees, Lynn and Linda, had a chance to talk to them, and they say there might be a possibility that we could make a fund transfer from the long-term facility to the general fund. And I'm going to do some more investigation on that along with Lynn and Linda, thanks to them. And we'll have something on the 25th or before that. So you might be able to make a decision on how to increase the fund balance a little bit in the general fund. But back to you, Tony.
Yeah. And I guess just the main focus over the past 3 or 4 years is that we've been focusing on really updating some of the interior furnishings of the school. For example, at Afton Lakeland, you can go and see about, I think we're a little over half through with that school. Lily Lake, in addition to that, we've done last year. And this year we're providing a lot of ADA restrooms, both in the cafeteria area and in the classroom wings. Again, this next year plan is kind of an extension of that, in my opinion. It would, again, there's quite it's a detailed list, and just if you will have any questions now or over the week, it's not going to be approved tonight. This is just a report. So again, back to, I know John will want to speak with me about the list as it report, as it relates to a fund transfer, what that opportunity may be or whatever. I don't know about that one yet. It has been always our goal to keep it, to avoid any peaks and valleys, just kind of keep it consistent over the years as far as taxes goes.
This is a gift. It used to be, Stillwater was really on the forefront. They were one of the first districts in the state to have this funding available to them. And it's originally started out with the 15 largest school districts in the state. And this is an effort to keep our buildings up to code and to make sure that they're safe and secure for not only our students and our staff, but also for our community too. So these are community assets that we want to maintain and take care of. And so I'm really kind of impressed at the detail and the hard work that they put in. It's a team effort. So it's not just Tony, and it surely isn't me. We've got a whole team of people that work hard to get this done.
Yeah, it is a big district and goes across a large geographical area. So I'm sure there's a lot of driving between buildings, and it does seem like Tony knows every single corner like
Yes,
the
he
back of his
does.
hand.
Yes, he does.
I have a question. You were mentioning that this was originally what alt facilities money
Mhm.
or something like that, where
That's
the
right.
15 largest districts were given a special fund to have some extra money to maintain their buildings, because the larger districts, that's a higher cost. As a result, now the long-term facilities funds for most districts who are not alt facilities have a limitation in terms
they
of the
do.
total amount that can be levied each year.
Right.
And I've heard other board members from other districts in conversation complaining like, oh, we wish we could lift that so we could levy for a higher amount.
Right.
And so it's something that, like you said, it's truly a gift that we don't have that limitation. But a concern that I have is, if we don't have that limitation, how do we identify what an appropriate amount is for every year? I think some years it's been as low as 3 or 3.5 million, and other years
Mhm.
it's been almost 8. And, like you said, we want to try to keep it even, but we also don't want it too high or too low.
Right.
So how can you guys talk to that a little bit about what's the process for deciding, what's a critical project that has to be done, right now?
Well, there are 3 or 4 safeguards that are put in. As a board, you happen to be one of the safeguards, because everything that goes through has to be approved by you. Okay, so the board is there. Also, the administrative team is very concerned to make sure that our buildings are safe, that our kids are safe, and that our staff and our community are safe when they go into our buildings. And the last thing is, Tony is very conscientious about doing it, but he also puts this together, and that goes to the Department of Ed, who reviews this too. And it's not just, I don't believe, Tony, a rubber stamp. I think they do take a look at this, and I think they are concerned about what happens. And we want to make sure that we're responsible to our taxpayers too, that we give them value for their dollar. And so I think those are the things that I'd like to mention. Tony?
And I would just add that, again, back
Thank you. That's
maybe
great.
5 years ago, Wold Architects and Engineers did a long-term facility
2015.
study, 2015. And again, they mentioned we should be hitting right around a $7 to $8 million mark in reinvesting into our schools. We really haven't done that in the past. Again, back to I've always tried to kind of just keep picking away at it, because that's where you're going to get it done. Again, and just a lot of these things identified, or some of them, not a lot, also have the flavor of the law, or even the past facility study we just did. Again, back to just keeping things fresh looking, because again, even though you can sit in a 1950 desk and that's fine, but if you still are using a chalkboard and they're starting to fall off the walls, let's get a whiteboard up there. One of those. That's kind of been back to where I've been plugging away at. And again, if you have any, discussion of something you would want to see, I'd love to talk about it, because again, this is me meeting with principals, seeing what real needs are, and moving from there. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Tony.
I have a question.
And I think, Mike, your hand was up first.
Yeah.
And then,
yes.
Tina?
And I'm building on something John said earlier. This is designed to keep maintenance in the forefront. I spent a good portion of my life as a educator in Wisconsin. this is a huge advantage Minnesota has, because when districts and districts often do go through cycles of feast and famine. And typically when famine hit, two areas in a lot of school districts were affected. And that was, one, they delayed maintenance, so it got put off. And the other one was staff development. It got got delayed. And what Minnesota has done, and I've always been impressed ever since I've lived in Minnesota, which is almost 30 plus years now, is they have these two tools designed legislatively to attack both those issues and make sure that maintenance and staff development is not ignored. I'm done.
Director, oh, thank you. Director Riley.
I was just kind of
Director
looking
Riley?
through here and can you hear me?
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just kind of looking through here and noticing the different schools, and I saw something down here for Withrow. Now I just want to make sure that we're keeping those buildings up that we're not in, so they're still in good shape. And
It's on the very bottom.
Right, I see there's $12,000 for failed controls in the rooftop units. So that was I just wanted to note that to make sure that we're keeping up on all of our, even the ones we're not currently in.
Yes, and again, that is not I know right now we're limping them through, shall we say, but their heat's on. We're, the controls, that would be more of, in 2 years, I have to estimate that there could be some control issue out there, and I'm very certain there would be. So again, that was just, it's a spot for that.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, I have one other one. I know that when we went through the community design team process, one of the products or the final list included not just new buildings and whatnot, but a lot of recommended upgrades and repairs and whatnot throughout the district. So is there, some of those suggestions, or do they exist on this list? I haven't cross-referenced it.
No, I've been very diligent about, I haven't dabbled into things that I shouldn't be dabbling in. So I've been trying to do things other than that, more or less.
Yeah.
Again, back to that is more of a group
Okay.
conversation of how we're going to get it achieved and when we're going to start tackling it.
So, but that is something we could go to at some point and start picking some of those
Correct.
items off the list. And
Correct.
work,
Anytime anybody
right?
wants to have a
Okay.
conversation,
Great.
let's do her. Yeah.
Tony doesn't.
Okay, that's awesome. Go ahead,
Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
Tony, doesn't some of that show up though in Lily Lake, where they're addressing some of the bathroom facilities, which has been a pressing need there?
That's this year. Yeah. Again, back to, I had that already started this year, but that was 2 years ago. So yes, but again, we're just picking away at it.
Thank
I think
you.
good ideas and good suggestions are always welcome and encouraged.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to apologize because it seems like my internet is really goofy today. So it's like a lot of times there's a delay, and so I apologize for that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. We'll look forward to hearing this again next at our next board meeting for an action item.
Thank you, Tony.
And reminder, board members, if you have any questions or suggestions for Tony, just go ahead and get a hold of him in the next couple of weeks. All right, thank you. All right, the next item in our reports is the first reading of policy 533. It is the wellness policy, and I will turn it over to the policy leader, Mark Burns.
Thank you. So Yep, this is a policy that we have an annual review cycle on. And so it would typically come up this time of year anyway. But in this case, we do have a change that is shown in red highlighting under section 4, health and nutrition education, subpart 3D. That's on page 3 of the policy, page 70 of the board packet. And this change was, so sometime earlier, I believe this spring, there was an audit, if you will, but MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, had reviewed our wellness policy and had indicated to the district that we are doing really above and beyond what the Board of Education or the district MDE would typically anticipate a district to have. But there was one area that MDE did identify that it would like to see in our policy. And it is based off of the MSBA model policy. And that is what is reflected here in the change. We are really just taking this language from the MSBA model policy, and this is responsive to MDE's suggestion that we included. And for the public, this is really, it goes to a marketing. So it's our policy, we're proposing it to be amended to say that schools will restrict food and beverage marketing to the promotion of only those foods and beverages that meet the USDA, and they call it the Smart Snacks in School Nutrition Standards, basically child nutrition standards that have been promulgated by the US Department of Agriculture. And there are some specific nutritional standards, and what MDE is asking is that we include in our policy that we're going to limit, if we do have any marketing in our schools of food options, that they are limited to these food choices. So that's the only change that we are proposing to this policy. And if I don't know if I spoke to any other policy member, if you had any other comments, or if there are any questions from board members.
Are there any questions about the wellness policy? Director Pelletier?
Can people hear me okay? Wait, Can you hear me okay? I hope?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm not.
Yes,
okay. I'm
you're
trying.
good.
I went off camera. I apologize for that because I was trying to find the volume. Anyway, I just no questions, Director Burns. This is just more for the public that this is I believe the first reading of the policy, and oftentimes the public has it's a policy that people like to look at and sometimes make comments about. So I just want to welcome the public at any time to look at this policy, and if you want to talk about it, great. That's what we're here for. So again, it's only in the beginning stages of that. Thank you.
Yep, so we welcome, we'll be having our next policy working group meeting on the 16th, that's this coming Tuesday. So if anybody in the public or board members, if you have any comments or concerns about this policy, please let us know. We will be then, the plan would be to bring this for a second reading at our next board meeting. I believe that's the 25th or 26th of June.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right, so let's move on. We are on to our action items tonight. The first one is the Read Well by Third Grade report with Karen Latterall. And I actually don't see her here yet. Oh, there she is. Hi, Karen. Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I was actually looking for your name. I didn't realize we would actually get to see you. So there you are. You can go ahead and take it away.
Well, good evening, everybody. Superintendent Pontrelli, Chair Stivlin, members of the board, community members. I am here tonight to seek approval of the Read Well by third grade plan that was presented to you at the board meeting on May 28th. After that presentation, I did receive questions from 3 board members, and I did return answers to those questions to the board members. I believe it was on Friday, June 5th. And I am here tonight to seek approval for the plan in accordance with statute 120B.12. And also, just in case you weren't aware, this plan is required to be submitted to MDE in order to receive our literacy incentive aid.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Karen before we take a motion? Director Weisberg?
Yes, one of the comments and the answers we got to our questions says, we request to see the documented evidence and data that demonstrates the continued opinion and allegation that LLI does not work for students with attributes of dyslexia. Furthermore, it's important that this data come from independent organizations or agencies. I just wondered what you meant by that comment.
Well, it's important when we're looking at curriculum that we look at sources of information that are unbiased, which means that they are not provided by any certain any specific groups. So it's sort of an independent research on LLI. And I just would like to point out too that we do use level literacy intervention in our interventions, but we don't use it exclusively and we don't use it for every single student. We work with our students and our assessment data and our teachers to make sure that we understand what each student needs in our intervention program. And then we tailor their intervention specifically to that particular need. So the concern that was brought up about using LLI made a blanket assumption that we use LLI for every single student in our program, and that's inaccurate.
And the only other concern that I have is I personally viewed the fact that the board asked for the letters training as kind of a compromise. And at first I thought that the letters training was being left out because just of being conservative, looking at COVID expenses and thinking we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, which I understand, which is why I asked for what kind of costs we're talking about. And I know you had provided it before, I just wanted a reminder. But then reading the responses now, it looks like it's just not going to happen. So is it going to happen? Is it a future thing? If the board put a certain amount of money into it, can that be taken out at this point? What's going to happen to the funds that we said we wanted to go toward letters? And then frankly, I'm just disappointed if letters is not going to happen at all.
Yes, we definitely plan to follow the directive of implementing the letters professional development. However, because it wasn't part of our internal plan, we hadn't had the time to work with staff on their summer schedules, and then also how it pertains to the school year, because the requirement for the professional development is pretty significant. When we're looking at 14 days of our staff's time, we can't mandate that in the summer. And so when we reached out saying, here's an opportunity, we had some staff that were excited for it, but because of needing daycare or because of summer schedules, and now because of COVID-19 and the fear of even being around people or not having the ability to be online learning, we didn't have the number of people we needed to offer that, and we didn't think it was feasible to offer that. We're still planning on it. We're having conversations about what it would look like for the school year and then next summer out. But because of the significant requirement and detailed level of the professional development, it's going to take a lot of long-term planning for staff to know to adjust their schedules. Even though they get compensated for it, working around their family summer schedules is an issue to schedule it.
I understand.
I'd also like to point out that I got a jump start on it, and I'm about halfway through the first year of the materials. And I would hope that you would see that as a good faith effort, that we are moving in that direction.
I appreciate it. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's that it will happen. There were so many things beyond everybody's control this summer. It's just going to be more delayed than we thought.
Correct.
Thank you.
Director Riley?
Do you think it would be possible for you, when you have a better idea as to what your PD schedule looks like, you could come back and to the board and let us know? Because I'm really excited when it starts happening. I'd like to hear a little bit about it and a little bit of feedback and what the teachers or the coaches think about it when they have their training. Could you come back to us with that information?
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Director Pelletier?
I was just going to make a motion if that's okay. Wonderful job, Karen and Rachel. Thank you so much for all your work in this. And again, I hope everyone can hear me. I would like to move that we approve the Reading Well by third grade plan.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Director Weisberg. All right, do we have any further discussion or questions? One little bit of feedback. I would have to say that I was also disappointed to see that the letters programming is not going to be available to our teachers right now, after we kind of talked about that a lot last year. And I really thought that that was going to be something beneficial to our teachers. And so I really do hope that that's going to be something we can have happen soon. Another thing that I see when I look at this whole document is just, I wish that there was a bigger presence for the parents' role as the primary teacher of how to read. I feel like parents have a really, really critical and important role in helping their kids learn how to read. And I sometimes I would like to see a little bit more, sort of direction. This is a public document, and who knows which parents might be looking at it. And I think the plan itself could have a little bit more robust, just a more robust approach to supporting parents. I think overall it's a good plan, but I just would like to see that parent piece in there a little bit stronger.
Thank you for that feedback. Just to clarify, the plan is built around the statute, and I certainly could add information at a different venue separate from the plan, unless you would absolutely like to have it within the plan. But the plan is built around the requirements of the statute.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I understand that. Thank you, though. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? Director Potacek?
Yeah, Karen and Rachel, I just sense that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears here, and I want to thank you for your efforts. So, thank you.
Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. If we're ready, then let's go ahead and take a vote.
Okay, Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, moving on. Our next item is the budget, and I will turn it over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair. I would ask that either John or Carissa probably give me some help. John did this morning. I don't know if he's there, or Carissa, starting on page 117 of the board packet. And I'd like to tell you that my presentation is going to be basically in 3 parts. And it's the main course that you're going to be approving tonight, and the main course that you want to see is going to be the budget. Then there's going to be a prelim before that, which will go through some information dealing with COVID and the primary budget, and then a closure at the end, which we'll talk about a few things. So we tried that out this morning, and I think board member Tina really liked it. So
Dessert.
dessert. She called it dessert. That's right. So this is the 2021 a preliminary budget. What I have on the page that you'll be able to see on your picture is just a budget timeline with the COVID update. And it's really started before I arrived here, and the budget work was way advanced before I arrived by the team at the district center or the service center. And they put together a really strong document. But it started with Governor Walz ordering schools closed by March 18th. And it moved through the beginning of emergency childcare, district distant learning, finance and operation reviewed the general fund budget, and that was first brought before the committee or the group on April 23rd. Then on May 14th, we made a presentation to the school board to review just the general fund. Next page, please. And then on the 28th, the finance and operations group reviewed all the other budgets other than the general fund. And the 28th, last board meeting, the board reviewed all other budgets other than the general fund. And tonight, we're going to ask for approval of the 2021 preliminary budget. Next page, please. COVID-19 has caused some difficult decisions to be made, and also some guesswork on a lot of school districts across the state and across the country. There is possible financial impact on the general fund during the current year, which is very close to being ended. And that's the COVID set aside, which we talked about earlier tonight. The new transportation or the transportation adjustments that had to be made because class was no longer in session. And also the number or the fewer substitute teachers and employees and staff members we had. I also recommended during that time to set aside or just to earmark 1.25% of the general fund budget, just in case something unusual popped up. So far, that's not been the case. 2021 fiscal year, we know that the contract settlement will most likely be approved during that fiscal year. We don't know about COVID. It could pop its head again, and they talk about it later in the fall. And then we set aside some amount for adjustments. Even with those, we believe that we'll be able to maintain our 5% fund balance. If you go to the next line, the possible financial impact this year on some of our other funds, let's take a look at nutrition services, which is really a very healthy fund. Loss of revenue and paid meals has a negative impact. And we continued to pay salaries and benefits, which is a negative impact. The reduction in food costs, we are going to spend less on food than we probably would if we'd had a regular program all year long. Potential assistance from the CARES Act. There might be some money available for that. And the superintendent just went through that earlier, and there'll be a plan put together, and there are guidelines we have to follow. There could be some indirect COVID costs down the road. And then we set aside earmarked 2% in case there was an emergency that would take place. That would be the current year. Now, for the majority of that, that's done, and CARES probably won't enter into it in this particular fiscal year. Go to the next page. For 2021, there could be some COVID costs. Food costs we think are going to go up just because you've been at the grocery store and you've noticed, even if we run a regular program. And we've earmarked 2% for just in case there's an emergency. even with that, we'll be able to maintain a 5% fund balance. And a lot of that has to do with the leadership that's in that particular fund. Now we want to take a look at community services. Community services is a fund that's probably hurt the most by the COVID. And mainly that's because that fund is driven by program fees. And a lot of those fees we're not able to collect. So also we continued salaries and benefits during that period of time. And then we had some indirect costs, not as large, but some indirect. There was a reduction in some substitute costs, and we do have a potential there for some CARES Act. I don't know if it would be this year or next year, but I mentioned it here. Potential chargebacks against the general fund. Each year, the Community Service Fund pays money back to the general fund. We'll take a look at that later on down the road to see if it's necessary that we need to make a transfer or how much we'd make of a transfer we'd make. And then there's a set aside or a contingency of a 1% in case there is something unexpected that happens. The next year is the 2021, next fiscal year. Staffing and benefits, people are going to be coming back to work, but we will have some idea. That could be, there might be, there's going to be costs involved. We know that. I know that our leadership is making some adjustments already, combining programs. A number of board members have mentioned that. There could be some COVID fees involved. Chargebacks are going to be entered in, and that could be a positive effect. And then the unforeseen budget adjustments, I increased that to 2%. And with that, we still believe we'd maintain a 5% fund balance. If you go to the next slide, this is the projected general fund. And you had a chance to see this early in April when I went through the general fund. And it shows the estimated revenue in for the general fund, capital outlay, and long-term facilities. It has the estimated expenditures, also the difference between revenue and expenditures, and then the estimated balance. The big difference is because of the not capital outlay, the long-term facilities. Our revenue will be less than our estimated expenditures. But we still will have a 5% fund balance, as I mentioned before. This is no small operation when you take a look just at the general fund. We're going to be spending $113 million or taking in $113.5 million and spending 114.6. Next slide, please. The general fund expenditures by program. I think this is interesting and something for you to take a look at as a board. You'll notice that our administration costs are really very reasonable and compared to a lot of the districts around us. When you figure that our unassigned is about 100 million and we have about 3.5 million in expenditures, that means our total expenditure administrative cost is about 3.5%. In a lot of districts, that's over 6+. You'll notice that it has district support services, regular and vocational education, special ed, community services, operation and maintenance, and that's again because of capital outlay and also the long-term facility. And then there's some fixed costs. So 114.6, and that's what was on the previous page. If you go to the next, I'll show you the revenues, general fund revenue by source. The largest amount of dollars that we receive comes, of course, from state aids and credits, although our property taxes are significant. Of that property tax, about $12 million comes from our referendum. So the continuation of a referendum is absolutely vital to the success of our district. And you'll notice there's the dollars and cents, and they will match up on the other previous pages. If you take a look at the next, this will show the object codes on the next page, and this breaks it out by salaries. Now you'll notice salaries and benefits equal about 73%. That is considerably lower, and the reason for is because you do have some capital outlay expenditures in there, and capital outlay expenditures has very few in the line of salaries and benefits. I'd say if you just looked at the general fund, I'd say you're probably spending on human resources, probably 80% of every 80 cents of every dollar that's paid out goes towards salary and benefits. You have to remember, we're in the people business, and what we do is we work with people and we work with kids and we supply. People always wonder, well, what do you purchase that costs so much money? And that's where, of course, your transportation costs happen to be. Also, your utility costs are included in there. And plus any tuition payments that you make or programming that you have like 916, your costs are in there. So the general fund again equals out 114 million, 0.6. And one thing I mentioned earlier today, my recommendation would be that periodically what you would ask your new business manager to do was to go into Skyward and provide a slice by object code, a slice by program, and also by revenue. And do this periodically. And what it would have is it will have the previous year budget, the previous year expenses year to date. It'll have the current year budget, the current year expenditures year to date, and then you can have a pretty good idea of what's happening. Sometimes that information can be misleading, like if you have a big payment or you settle a contract with back pay, that could change it. But I think those would be important documents, important information for you as a board, especially the finance and operation group to have and take a look at. Now, before I put you all to sleep, let's go to the next page. And here are some potential factors that are going to affect the general fund. Abatement and delinquent taxes are, and that's a negative, but you have to remember that you can levy back for those. Proration and state aids, and that's just when they set aside so many dollars to cover a program and it costs more. Usually that shows up in special ed. Shifts in state aid, that is negative because it affects your cash flow, but it really doesn't affect the bottom line. Third-party billing revenues are might be up, might be down, and that's for the insurance that we receive. I mentioned the CARES Act, and the superintendent talked about that earlier. I think our student enrollment, I'm really very positive about our student enrollment, and you're going to learn more from that from Hazel Reinhardt as you go along. And then staffing, transportation costs, technology costs, utility costs, and then there are always some unknowns. I've always said that when you put together a budget, you look at and you've probably got 10 key things that you have to keep your eye on. And your hope is that 5 work exactly the way you want it to, and probably 5 don't, but it kind of balances out. When you get into trouble is when the swing goes too far one way, and it works out better when it goes too far positive, when you have things that go right that you plan. So those are potential impacts in the general fund. If you go to the next, just this slide, there are some questions. Are there any questions on that? Because I'm going to go into the general fund and then, as Tina said, close with dessert a little bit later on down the line. But are there any questions on what I have had a chance to show you so far? Yeah, Mark. Oh, I'm sorry.
John.
That's board chair. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Is that okay if I go? If
Chair.
if you go back to the slide, which is the title, I think it's your first table, projected general fund balance on the board packet 125.
Right. Yep, I right there.
Okay.
There you go.
And you mentioned that, probably the biggest impact here is the long-term facility maintenance,
Right.
where we have kind of a difference between the estimated revenue and estimated expenditures.
Right.
Can you just speak to kind of why we have that difference? What is our typical revenue on the LTFM?
I think what we've had is, and I can only guess because I wasn't here, so I'm going to give you my best estimate on what happened. I think what happened was the needs were greater than the revenue, and we had a significant balance in that account. In an effort not to over levy people, they held the levy and increased the expenditures, so it came out a little balance. We still have a healthy balance in the long-term facility maintenance. And this year, I know that the levy will go up. We'll increase the revenue to try to match that. I won't be here, but that's my guess, if that makes any sense to you. I think they were trying to keep the tax burden a little lower on our taxpayers.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Shelley.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm
Just to
sorry.
follow up on that, I think what we've been told in the past is that it kind of all evens out over time, that some years are going to be higher and some are going to be lower, and
Right.
that you want to look more over several years, because some of it has to do with when the work was done in one year and not in the other year.
Right. Yes, I do think that's right. And I think there's a lot of things that enter into it. I've always said it's kind of like the dam that lets the water in or out. And what you're trying to do is keep that balance so that there's enough revenue coming in to cover, but not so much that you're, as I've always said, we're in the kid business, not the banking business. And we're here to take care of kids, not to build a huge fund balance. You want to have enough money to take care of a rainy day, but not at the expense of the local taxpayer. We want to give them value for what they spend.
Go ahead, Director Pelletier, but you're muted. Oh, there we go.
Hi, John. Thank you.
Hello.
Could you please go back to the admin? You said something there that I don't know that I've heard that before. You made a comparison of our admin expenses versus comparable districts of our size. Did you mention a figure of 3.5% to 6% or something like that? Could you just
Yeah.
go back to that and speak to that quickly?
Sure. I think our admin expenses are pretty fairly conservative compared to some other districts. Now, I have to be clear. Some districts, I wouldn't say that they may code expenses differently. And I know that, let's take Mounds View, for example. Mounds View's administrative costs are usually pretty low. And the reason that they are is they charge it back to certain areas and they use it. I don't believe that's the case here. I think ours are true blue. And although I think some of, I'm sure we maybe pay some of our administrative costs out of long-term facility. I'm not sure. That I couldn't say. But I think they're very reasonable. And 3.5%, I think if you ask AMSD, and that might be an assignment for, if you had a board member who really liked to be involved in AMSD, you could give him or her that assignment. And then they could go and check what other districts spend. And I think you'd find you are very favorable in that particular area. You're welcome.
Okay, Director Potacek.
Yes, John, it seems to me, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, the picture is a lot more encouraging right now than it was a month or two ago.
Yes.
A lot more uncertainty in those times.
Right. I have to give credit to the administration and the board working together last year. They made some very timely adjustments in the budget, which really made a difference. Stop and think, if you hadn't made those reductions and then subtract $2 million off that and then look forward and see where you're at, that changes the picture a little bit. That really created a situation where you're in pretty good, I think. I know a lot of districts that would like to switch finance pictures with you. So I think it looks pretty good.
That's good to know. It was not easy. It was not easy to go through that process. So it's good to know that it was helpful to our district.
Yeah,
Just
I
get us
did.
set up for better
Who was
people.
ever looking ahead, I think they did they did the right thing. So kudos to whoever. Well done.
All right. we have any other questions?
Well, there's always time for more, but the main chorus is coming up. And if is
This is
Carissa
the
or John
dessert
in there?
right here.
Yeah, no, this is the main chorus, and that's the
Okay.
budget that's put together. And I have to tell you, the folks that you have working at the service center, the people that probably you may know their names, you don't really have a chance to see them that often. They're really, really committed to this. I mentioned Lynn and Linda, and I was there today visiting with them, and they called me later and they said, we just talked to the state and we found out that this might, they made sure I said might be possible, that we might be able to use some excess funds in LT, long-term facility maintenance, and transfer them to the general fund. And again, that might be a possibility. And I'm going to find out with their help. And what we'll do is we'll come back and maybe have something for you next meeting that might help you out down the road, give you a little more flexibility, because general fund money can be used well for everything that's legal. You can't, certain things you can't do, but everything that's legal, where long-term facility maintenance money would be kind of set toward that particular program. So that's something we'll get information for you on so that you can take a look at. I think, again, it's also important too that you take a look at your Skyward system. And if you have a chance, I know that staff members would be able to help you with it, help you design printouts so that you could get the information you need to make the right decision. And those are really very helpful. They give you a picture of what happened last year, what's going on this year, and what's going to happen down the road. And it's very helpful.
And John, you talked
ahead.
about the three things. They were object, program, and what was the third one?
The revenue source.
Okay.
And, but you can design those. I mean, as John Perry, I think, said today, be careful what you ask for, because he could probably design 1,000 different things for you to look at. And he would probably like to do that too. So don't let him do it. So if whoever is doing it, is it Carissa or John? If there aren't any other questions, we'll go back and we'll show you the new cover of the budget, which you have, and I'll hold it up. It looks exactly like this. There's a lot of good information in here, and that I know you've taken a look at. It's supplemented by what I gave you earlier, and that gives a lot of the detail that you need. That's the information that will be put in the system and that you'll be able to monitor as you go along. And you'll be able to compare with what happened last year and what's going on this year, and you'll be able to relate. So I'm hoping that's what we're going to ask you to approve. And then I have the kind of the final thing, and that's just a narrative that you've had a chance to see before. And I think that's at the end, and I don't know if it's John or Carissa that has it. If you can pop that up there, there might
I
be
have it, but I'm not quite sure what you're looking for, John. So
it's
bear
a
with me.
narrative at the very end, and it has the it's a written it
Bear
asks
with me one
questions.
moment and I will find it here for you.
Yep. Questions and answers, and there they come A, B, C, D, and she'll find that.
I apologize. I don't have this right at my fingertips, so it might take me a moment if you can continue without it.
Page 184, Carissa.
Yes.
Director Pearson, did you have something?
Yeah, can I ask a question while Carissa's finding that?
Sure.
And I think you've maybe spoken to this other weeks, but I'm looking at section 2, page 2, where it talks about the fund balance.
Yeah.
Going to 10.44%. And I'm still a little confused. We went through budget cutting last year because the charts we got showed that we were just gonna tank after a couple years. And I know we did the budget cuts, we got some additional funding for special ed, but it's just such a big gap from where I thought we were gonna be. And, we've made some decisions based on where we thought we were going to be. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to talk about the situation back then because I wasn't really part of that or no. I think what they were taking a look at is the estimates. And I tell you, anybody who is in the school finance business they happen to be belt and suspenders kind of people. They overestimate your expenditures and usually underestimate your revenue. And the goal always has been for me personally, I try to overestimate expenditures by at least 1% and underestimate revenue by 1%. And then it seemed to work out a lot better. I don't know what the decision making wasn't there. I'm glad they made that decision now, because I think you're in a position where I know people, I know districts that are they're non-renewing all their non-tenured people, all of them, just a blanket non-renewal. And that is absolutely devastating to employees to have their position put on hold. And what you're doing is putting their life on hold. And they're going, well, how am I going to buy food? How am I going to pay my gas bill? How am I going to pay my college loans? And I think you've really helped save a lot of staff members from that. And it's not only staff members, you've saved a lot of kids from that, because your students are going to be in classrooms that are manageable, and they're going to walk in and see the teacher that they expect to see. And that is worth a lot. So
Thank you.
I didn't answer you, but I gave you I don't know the process for that, but I'm glad it's here now. The dessert kind of is just some questions, some basic questions, and it talks about the primary budget is accurate. And you know what happened. The budget was all put together, lots of people contributed, then COVID came and everybody dispersed like the wind. And just people were not available to tear that apart. And plus we had so many unknowns that it was almost impossible for us to adjust it. All it would mean is a lot of confusion and the opportunity for us to make some rash judgments that wouldn't pay out. And I think I commend you for not doing that. Will Stillwater operate regular classes this fall? I think everybody hopes that's the case and that we're looking forward to. And I talk about it in the narrative there. And I think it's pretty clear that we're preparing as a district. The superintendent has laid out a plan. She has her administrative team working on it. And so they're right at it. Does the school district need to retool the budget now? No, but you will. And you will retool that in probably late fall, very early winter, around the time you make the levy, because that will give you time to hopefully settle the contract and also gather some information from previous years to see where you're at on the printouts. And I think periodically you should have a dipstick to check that budget totals to see where you're at. This is not a one and done kind of thing. It's a continuous process. Why don't we start over with zero? Right now, that would not be very practical. Example would be just the CARES stuff that showed up today. Transportation contract that came out better than we thought. Substitutes, the COVID costs, all those things enter into it. So you'd be making decisions on something you couldn't. What should the school board do now? And I think you're doing that. You're discussing and talking about the unknown future. You're trying to plan for it, and you're trying to get the best and most accurate data you can, so you can make the best decisions possible. And you've set aside some reserve just in case, and you'll still make that 5%, I believe. Next, going up the ladder would be food service is very good shape, very well run. Community service fund, that's going to be a little struggle, but you've got the right person in that spot doing the right things. The only thing, her heart is so big, she has room for everybody. So, and that's not a bad thing. We like people with heart doing good things for kids, because that's the business we're in. The next one, in case there's details, Completion of construction, we're getting down to the end. There'd probably be about $500,000 left to work with. Will it affect debt service? Nope. Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there would be any effect on it. We have a good fund balance. Why does the OPEB fund balance have zero? Because we paid off the bonds that initially set it up. And what are the trust funds toward the end? And that's the, it talks about funds that are no longer have balances in it and were moved around, and they're particularly for scholarships. And the last one, I think, is, what are they? OPEB trust fund and internal fund. The trust fund has about $7.5 million in it right now. Each year they do have or not each year, but every other year we have a actuarial study completed to see what they try to do is say, how many people are going to retire? How old are they going to be when they retire? Are they going to get benefits? How long are they going to live? I hate to say that. It's a few things like that that enter into those calculations. It's kind of like doing insurance. And the internal service fund is really for the dental and health insurance. And that has a fund balance at the end of June last year of 3.5, and you'll get that when the audit is done. And that's it. And what I guess I'd say, I'd stand for questions, and then hopefully you'll approve the meat and potato budget, and we'll be able to go forward and have that listed. So, okay, wake up.
Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions, comments, final thoughts?
I just have a very,
Anyone?
Yes, Liz.
I
Go
just
right
have a
ahead.
very quick comment. John mentioned this morning, we talked about all this at the Finance Committee, Finance Working Group meeting this morning. And I really appreciate the fact that he mentioned anybody at any time can look in Skyward as far as a reference, and you can compare past years, multiple years. John also mentioned that it would be helpful to tell somebody what you specifically wanted to look at, because otherwise you would get a giant report that was a lot more than you needed to know. But I thought I thought that was very helpful to know that anybody at any time can do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You have to have staff that are going to help you to do that. But once you have it set up, you should be able to gather that information relatively quick. And it is very helpful. And I think that's what your administrators do that. If you take a look at principals in the building, they have access to that stuff, so they know what their budgets are and how much they have and what they spent and what they haven't spent. So that's how you manage the organization, I think, to the best of your ability. So you can do that. And there are always things that you can do. I mentioned the transfer, but there's also some things that you might be able to do. There might be different ways to pay things. Capital outlay could be used for certain things that you probably don't do right now. And it's not the traditional, but you could do some things with that too. But I'll watch from afar and wish you very well.
Thank you. Director Riley.
I just want to say thank you for your insight in the way that you have laid all this out for us. The presentations over the last several weeks, maybe, have been very helpful to be able to work through it and understand it and talk through it. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. But remember, I'm standing on the shoulders of lots of other people. And so
Absolutely.
they do the work and I just sit here.
Director Potacek.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 preliminary budget.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Director Weisberg, seconds. Any further comments, discussion, questions, feedback? This is your last chance. All right. Oh, okay, there we go. Director Burns.
Just very quickly, that I just want to amplify and remind both the board members and the public that this is a living document that it's a preliminary budget that we are approving. That as we go through the summer and into fall, we begin to learn more, we can make adjustments. And so those are, we'll keep our eyes open. And as we, think about things that we need to or want to do with the budget, that's what this board can do. So we have that opportunity as we go forward.
Yes.
Thank you so much for saying that. I think it's important. It's an important reminder because there usually is so much involved with preparing the budget. And we do this every year at this time of year. And there's a lot of details to go through. And sometimes it feels like, okay, now that's done. But really, it's an ongoing project, isn't it? Something we can be talking about all the time and looking at it and keeping an eye on things and making adjustments as we go along. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Anything else? Okay, Sherry, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potachik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. That was very helpful. Item C on the action list is the Oakland Middle School Pool Ceramic Tile Project. This is something we had not too long ago. It got put on hold and now here it is again. So let's hear what you have to say.
Well, you know what? I think
About
Tony
the-
is Tony's still here. There he is.
Oh, good.
And
I
he
love
knows
Tony.
more about pools. He loves water. So I'm going to turn it over to
Okay.
Tony
I
and let
do.
him talk.
I do.
Very good. Thank you,
Prior
Tony.
to this,
Go right ahead.
you bet. Prior to this, question fraction item.
How you doing, Tony? Are
Tony,
you
we're having
frozen?
some trouble with your connection. I don't know if you can still hear us, but I'm going to ask that you, Tony, if you can turn off your camera. It seems like you have.
Contractors didn't have a comfortable, 'cause it was under. Can you hear me now?
Thanks, Tony. I think that'll work better.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Go ahead now, Tony.
We
Thank
can
you.
hear you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So again, prior to this second round of pricing.
Tony, we're still having trouble with
Yep.
your connection. We're kind of losing you in and out.
Yes. John, could you start?
Sure. I'll give him a little help here. Earlier this year, this was brought before the board and there was not a discrepancy, but when the bids came in, one was very much lower than the other. And so what happened, Tony investigated and found out that the low bid had forgot part of the bid. So in order to make it a fair bid, they rebid the process. And so you have the new bid in and the winner happens to be, Tony, I'm going to tell you in about 2 seconds, as soon as I find it.
Market and Johnson.
Yes, Market and Johnson. Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
I knew you'd come through for me.
Yeah.
So
And with a bid total of 97,569. Again, the prior bids did not include prepping the subsurface for the tile. So now it does. And because we were able to have it removed so that they could take a look at it. And also if you notice there was a deduct alternate, but and that was just to paint the walls and provide no ceramic tile. After I'll say I had to do some soul searching only because I don't want to spend more money than we have to. But that was just to paint it. And I do believe the painting would end up cracking over the next few years and it just would not look right. So again, back to the architect and I chatted about it and they agreed that we should replace the tile with tile. And so that is how I would recommend we proceed with that. And the color of the tile is white with a splash of red, just so you know. And it will, the black doors will look wonderful against that scheme.
Oh my gosh.
Again, I was like the only question I was asked. So anyway.
That was my one question.
Yep. With that, do you have any other
Awesome.
questions?
Does anybody have a question about the pool tile? Director Pelletier?
I don't have a question. I'm just glad to hear that you've got some black on the doors. Otherwise, it's going to look a little bit too much like Badger colors. So thought I would just add that. With that, I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the Oakland Middle School pool wall tile replacement with Market and Johnson.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Director Burns will second. Any other questions or comments about the pool tile? All right, I think, Sherry, we're ready for a vote.
Okay, Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We have a number of policies that we need to go through. We'll start with policy 428 and sorry, did I skip something? Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
letter D.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I skipped D. The renewal of the teachers on call contract with Kathy Moen. Sorry about that. You can go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Stivland, Superintendent Pontrelli, and members of the board. Before you this evening is a request for the renewal of the teachers on call contract for substitute staffing services. During the months of February and March, we did a request for proposals and we received proposals from 3 companies. Those companies included ESS, which is Educational Services Staffing, Parallel, and Teachers on Call. The Teachers on Call proposal that we received was lower than both of the other proposals and was guaranteed for a period of 3 years. The ESS proposal was 4.5% higher, and the Parallel proposal was 6% higher. A summary of the information related to the 3 proposals was provided in your board packet. And we did spend about an hour with the finance working group and went through some detailed background information regarding our substitute costs and our the proposal that you have before you. Administration is requesting approval of the contract with Teachers on Call for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2023. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, do we have any questions? Shelley?
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Kathy, can you just quickly, for those of us who were in a finance working group, talk about what the rates mean and maybe what the difference is between what's the monetary difference between the different rates?
I don't have the dollar amount specifically between the 3, but what I can share with you, the way that the substitute costs are charged is at a percentage of our daily rate. So the Teachers on Call rate is 26%. So what they do is they take the cost of our daily rate. So if let's just say it was 100, then they charge us $126 to fill our substitute opening for that day. Our current rate is $130 a day, so it'd be 26% on that. And within that, and we went through a little bit of this detail with the committee, it seems like a high amount, but these are the expenses that are covered by that amount includes Teachers on Call. These become Teachers on Call employees, and they become responsible for the FICA, the Medicare, the workers' comp, the unemployment, If employees under the ACA reach a number of hours to be eligible for insurance benefits, they are responsible for providing and paying for those benefits as well. They pay for all of the training and the PD and all of the hiring related expenses such as background checks. So the 26% that we have from Teachers on Call, the numbers that we had from the other two providers was 30.5% through the ESS proposal and 32% through Parallel. When we started with Teachers on Call, they were very willing to work with us and we were able to negotiate that 26% rate. And they have actually agreed to, they've maintained that rate since February of 18 when we started with them. And they've agreed to continue that same rate for an additional 3 years. So it'd be about 5.5 years, you would have had the same rate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Weisberg.
Kathy, is this a fair, let me just know if this is a fair summary of kind of everything. Because there was only really a full year of comparison as far as the old system when everything was handled in-house, it may have been a little bit cheaper to handle it in-house, but you didn't have the pool of substitutes that you have going with Teachers on Call. The downside, I think substitutes that were within the district had an opportunity to contribute to retirement, and that got lost. But if I remember correctly, I think you said that might be something that's in the future as far as Teachers on Call because they had a merger with another company. Is that right?
Kinda. So Teachers on Call in Kelly Services are a company that's together. So Kelly Services took over the Teachers on Call, but they continue to have their name. The one downside that we have found with the Teachers on Call is that our substitutes that were with us as employees, because they were employed by us as a public school district, had access to TRA and PERA as a para. Because Teachers on Call is not a public employer, they are not able to provide those benefits. And they have actually made attempts with the legislature to try to change that, given that a lot of their employees are. That has not been successful, but what they do have available is an optional 401k that employees are able to do as employees of Teachers on Call that they do have access to.
But it does give us a larger pool of substitutes to choose from going through Teachers on Call than having it in-house, correct?
Yes, our pool of subs significantly increased from what we could recruit in-house to what they have available. And a part of that is because when a substitute registers or starts their employment with Teachers on Call, they can register one time and complete employment paperwork and background information, and they can work for any other district that's also a part of Teachers on Call. So North St. Paul and other districts around us that are using Teachers on Call, they can also be subs for them without having to do all of the paperwork for every individual employer. That also gives us access to the sub pool from the districts around us as well, that allows us to have a bigger pool of subs.
So is it fair to say then, it wasn't, I don't remember the difference in expenses being huge, even though I do think in-house maybe was marginally cheaper for us to do. And really the only downside is that we can no longer help those teachers with retirement benefits, but maybe that could happen in the future. And because it seems like it substantially reduces administrative work for our district to do, and it gives us a larger pool, even though there are some cons, it seems like overall Teachers on Call was a better thing for the district as a whole.
Yes, one of the things we talked about that I would agree. As far as the cost, to your point earlier, we really only had one full year of Teachers on Call to use as a comparison. Our fill rate was better during that 1 year. And the costs are different because when you're trying to compare from year to year, it all depends on the rate of pay, how many absences you filled and how many absences you didn't fill. So if you had a lot of unfilled, those are costs that you didn't pay, but you would have paid had you filled those spots. The other piece is the Teachers on Call has access for employees. I believe when I told it up, it's 80 hours a week. They have access for people to be able to work with someone as far as booking positions for us to be able to do that in-house, we would need 2 full-time people that work all week, nights and weekends, to give that kind of a support to the employees that are doing the subbing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Pearson?
Thank you. And I can just affirm, I think, a little bit that I wasn't really thrilled to outsource this, but I did a lot of volunteering that last year before we went to Teachers on Call. And there were so many days and so many holes of subs that it was frustrating for teachers and for students. And I have seen that it's a much better fill rate, and it happens a lot less often that those holes remain during the school day.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's perfect. We still have some work to do, and we've got some days where we have a number of subs that are unfilled. We have been working with the teachers group and trying to look at some things to figure out ways. We have to figure out a way to balance out reducing the number of absences and increasing the number of subs in order to really fill that gap. So we are working on that.
Kathy, can you just speak to a little bit about the, do we get, with the Teachers on Call service, do we have a lot of the same people coming in and filling those positions, or is it kind of like a huge number of people? I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of if the individuals who are serving as substitute teachers, are they getting to know our district? Are they getting to know our kids? You know, is there kind of a relationship being built there, or is it just we get random person every time?
No, I would say we do have subs that are building relationships. In fact, our teachers have the ability to request specific subs if they want, just like they could do when we did it in-house. So some teachers who have their go-to subs that they still like to use and have relationships with. There are subs that can choose just to work in our district if they choose to, even though they might be registered with other districts. They may choose to work in Stillwater, and we do have some that have only worked in Stillwater. So I would say they have the ability to build those relationships.
That is really good to hear, because I think when I first heard about Teachers on Call, that was probably my #1 concern. Is just I think that having substitute teachers that we are all familiar with and that know our kids and know our buildings is a really good thing. So I'm really happy to hear that we still have that.
Yes, and a lot of our subs that we did have on staff as in-house did go over to Teachers on Call and are still working with our students.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Director Riley.
Kathy, I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about on the training and the benefits that Teachers on Call gives to their employees as far as the ability to grow and expand on their career.
Yes, so with Teachers on Call, they have every person who starts with Teachers on Call is required to attend 2 PD sessions before they're even able to go to work. Once they are employed with Teachers on Call, they have access to, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name of it is, but they have access to in-person trainings. They also have access to online trainings. And there is an organization called, I believe it's called Steady, that is through the Utah University. And all of the subs that are employed through Teachers on Call have access to online training at no cost to them through that organization as well. They're a well-known substitute training organization.
That's great. That's awesome. Any other questions? Okay. I think we need a motion to approve the Teachers on Call contract. Director Pelletier?
I move to approve the Teachers on Call contract for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023.
I'll second.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have all right, we have a second. Director Pearson? Any other questions or comments? All right, I think, Sherry, we're ready for a vote.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Well done.
All right, now let's get, yes, thank you. Now let's get on to our policy. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 policies to go through. Let's start with 428, and I will turn it over to Mark Burns.
Thank you, Chair Stivland. And just before I get to this policy 428 and the others, there's one thing that I had neglected to mention as it pertains to the wellness policy 533 that we had discussed in our policy working group meeting that we would like to see working towards the future in this wellness policy, a component that is directed to mental health, the services to students that the district would like to support in its policy for mental health services. So what we had discussed is over the course, that it's an annual review cycle. Over the course of the next year, we're looking to have input from administration, teachers, from parents, from students, as to what that component might look like. And so the hope would be that this time next year, when we come back with the annual review of that wellness policy, that we may have a mental health component to it. So that's all. I just wanted to say that because I neglected to mention that earlier. With policy 428, this is our action item, the first policy that is a third reading. This is employee technology and internet access and acceptable use. This is a new policy for the district, and it is directed toward employees, whereas in the past we had a bit of a hybrid policy, which was for both employees and students. And so in this case, this is a new policy. This is our third reading, and there's been no changes since our second reading. So with that, I would look for a motion to approve policy 428, employee technology and internet access and acceptable use.
Director
I so
Potacek?
move. I so move.
All right, we have a motion to approve employee technology policy 428. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Director Riley is a second. Any questions, comments, further discussion? All right, I think, Mark, are we ready for a vote?
Looks like it.
All right, Sherry. Okay, Sherry, let's vote.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item G.
Yep, it's actually item F here, the policy 524. The student version,
Having trouble with my letters.
technology and internet access and acceptable use. This has been modified simply to remove the portions of the policy that pertain to employees. Otherwise, it remains the same. There have been no changes since the first and second readings. And so with that, I would look for a motion to approve policy 524, student technology and internet access and acceptable use.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Okay, oh, go ahead, Director Pearson.
Thank you. Just one comment really quick to thank John Perry for all his work in these two policies, getting everything in there that we needed in there and taking them apart like you did. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. That was very, very helpful. I like these two policies. I like how they're written. I think this is good for our district. Are we ready to vote?
Mhm.
Okay. Sherry, let's vote.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, now how about let's go to G.
So item G is policy 506, student discipline. This is, again, an annual review cycle. As we discussed, there had been a few minor changes at the first reading, but since the first reading, there have been no changes to this policy. If there aren't any questions or concerns about this policy, I would ask for a motion to approve policy 506, student discipline.
So moved.
And we all right, let's go with Director Riley moving to approve the student discipline policy. Do we have a second? Director Weisberg, any comments? Okay, so I just have one about the discipline policy. Just as a kind of a reminder, this is one that we review annually. And I think maybe you might have just mentioned that, but so we'll be seeing this again next year. And one of the things that I personally would like to see in this policy is a bigger presence of a more restorative justice-based approach to discipline. And we have made a few changes to this policy this year to begin to strengthen that language. And I appreciate that, and I think that's a good start. But I think we can do more because I feel like discipline is really sort of a really sort of strong way of describing how we get along with one another, and when we have problems, how do we solve them? And so I feel like what we have written in our discipline policy kind of makes a difference when we're in those difficult times. And I think over the next year, I think it would be really, really great if we could have sort of a little bit more comprehensive voice of the students involved in crafting this policy. I know we've had committees work on this in the past. I just would like to maybe focus on that a little bit this year if we can. But having said that, I like the improvements we've made for this year, and I just want to keep going. So, Director Pelletier?
Yeah, I like that comment. And one thing I think would be a nice addendum to that is leading by example, showing our students that we also know how to work with our administration as opposed to in opposition to them. So I think it'd be a great idea if we can lead by examples as the head of the Board of Education. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Thoughts about the discipline policy? All right, I think we are ready for a vote.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. All right, and we have one more, I think, H, policy 514. Go ahead, Director Burns.
That's right. This is the last policy on the list. again, another policy that we have an annual review cycle. So this will be coming up again next spring in the event that people want to have input on it between now and then. But this is one that there have not been changes since the first reading of this policy. And so if there are not any questions or concerns, then I would ask for a motion to approve policy 514, bullying prohibition.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the bullying policy? I'll move. I'll move to approve the bullying policy. Can we get a second?
Second.
All right, Director Weisberg, we have a motion and a second. Anybody have any questions or comments about the bullying policy? I'll just say again that I think this policy also with the discipline policy, you know, is one that should have, because we review it annually, I think it would be really great to have more student voice in the process of that annual review. And I know we have had some in the past, but I think it's really important that we have that. So, and with that, are we ready to vote? Okay, Sherry, let's vote.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
Yes.
Director Patajic,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stibland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Burns. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the separation agreement with employee A, and that is me. So I have a statement I would like to read, and then we'll open it up for discussion. This separation agreement has been negotiated in good faith with the authority approved by the school board. Approval by the majority vote of this school board will validate that this is a fair and reasonable agreement and that it is in the best interest of our school district to confirm it. Both parties were represented by excellent legal counsel, and both parties entered into the negotiation process voluntarily. It was an amicable process. I would like to clarify that if and until this agreement is approved by the board, it is classified as private personnel data. Some in the community have been frustrated by the lack of discussion about this topic before now, and I want to make it clear that privacy is protected until the process is complete. And now that this negotiated agreement is before you, I ask for a motion to approve it.
Moved.
Director Weisberg, we have a motion. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Director Riley, we have a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the separation agreement with employee A. Is there any discussion? Director Burns?
So the first thing that I'd like to do is to, for public clarity, to make sure that it's understood that this employee A is not the same individual as whom was identified as employee A in our March 19th, 2020 board action to place employee A on administrative leave. I did want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Director Pelletier?
Thank you. As I think I've stated, I had to find out about what's going on by looking through multiple old bills, basically. And I'm struck by, it looks like on 3/12, March 12th, which was the height of the COVID situation, very scary times. You had your initial conversation with our attorney with regards to employee A. I guess I'm wondering, when did employee A get the ultimatum?
I wouldn't describe it as an ultimatum. There was an invitation to begin a conversation. And I don't know the exact date of that time, but it was sometime around that time, sometime between March and April.
Okay.
Director Potacek?
Yes, and this was furnished by the attorney. I think negotiations began late April.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking about exchanges.
That sounds right. Right.
So just point of clarification. So the initial conversation who initiated the initial conversation? I guess, where did that begin? Who started that?
Well, the conversation was between both lawyers, and the invitation to begin a negotiation was put out by the lawyer.
Who directed the lawyer?
Or by our lawyer. You're asking to by our lawyer, by our lawyer.
Yeah, thank you. Who directed the lawyer?
That would be me.
Okay, and then when was
we were asking the question. There was no ultimatum. It was just a question. The question was, is there an interest in negotiations? And the answer was yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I just make a statement? I guess I had many things I was thinking of saying, but I think, I started with going through these bills and looking at, all of these, I think about fairness and mistakes I've made and whatnot, and as a board member, and I think of respect and mutual respect. And I went through a year of, it looks like the chair and Mike Potacek, and then a chair and another board member, just multiple times over and over. And all of these are just so many conversations highlighted over the past year that I knew nothing about. So frankly, it's so many, it's staggering. And I've been very angry about this, but I'll say this. I have heard from some students this week that have experienced some terrible things that they don't deserve, that have just rocked me to the core. And I am so ashamed that this happened in my district. But I said to the student, do not let that anger get in your space. Don't allow hate to enter your space. You have much work to do in this world, and this moment will pass, and we need you to be a leader. So I guess I'm going to end this moment with seeing these young families who are so excited to be ponies. And I'm going to speak as if I was speaking to my children. Do not let revenge get in your mind. Revenge doesn't end well. It hurts the heart. It's angry and it's wrong. Don't let that in your space. Do good things. Learn from your mistakes. Be a leader. Be a leader of good. And don't perpetuate polarization. You can do better. We can do better. Please show this board that there is good and that you can do better than we are right now in this moment. Thank you.
Director Burns.
Thank you. I'd like to share with the board and the public the reasons why I oppose this agreement. The first reason is that it's fiscally irresponsible at any time, but certainly at a time when this board is pursuing financial constraints on hiring due to the uncertainties of COVID-19. Approving this contract is particularly financially troubling. I oppose this agreement because it's operationally irresponsible. Planning for the upcoming school year may be the most challenging in memory. We as a district need every human resource available to effectively plan and execute the delivery of the education to our students. I oppose this agreement because there is a lack of support. There's a lack of support to it from our teachers, from our principals, from the rest of our educational staff, from our families, and even our community at large. And finally, I oppose this agreement because simply it hurts our students. And ultimately, that's what our decisions have to be based upon. Does it help our students? And I don't believe it does. I believe it hurts our students. I'd also like to say that I object to the procedure through which this agreement was prepared. We agreed upon a board goal about a year ago to increase community trust and engagement. We agreed unanimously upon a strategy that we would strive toward consensus on every vote in order to increase community trust and engagement. This process was conducted solely, I assume, by 2 board members, seemingly intentionally without input from the rest of the board, and brought as a finished product to the board 1 week before today, when we're asked to have an up or down vote. There are so many alternatives to this agreement that we could have pursued. We could have discussed. We had that opportunity. We didn't take it. That would have been striving toward consensus. This is not.
Thank you for that, Director Burns. I would have to just simply argue with you that it's not true that we haven't tried to have conversation. It's just simply not true. And it's just not true. So
I'm saying as a board.
I can understand your point of view, but this was something that we were authorized to do by the board. Director Potacek?
Yes, 2 things. One, that authorization came in July 2019. Secondly, I think that Chair Stivlin made 3 points that I think have to be remembered and very important. To reach an agreement, you had to have both parties agree to something, and they did. It was voluntary. It was not coerced. And last and very, very important as well is it was amicable.
Chair Potacek, I guess I wouldn't agree with that in wholeheartedly. I think the amicable conversation was between lawyers.
I would agree.
Yes, that's true. This was a series of conversations between lawyers. Director Pelletier?
Well, I'm perplexed. So Chair Potacek, our previous chair, and Director Stivlin, how many discussions have you had behind the scenes to get to this end?
Director Pelletier, I really would not know. I would just say this has been an ongoing conversation between both sides. And at any given time, either side could have stepped out of that conversation. So to that extent, I would agree that what Director Potacek said is true, that this was a mutual negotiation. And to the extent that we continued to work through it until we came to an agreement, it was amicable and it continued. And at any point, either side could have stepped out. And that did not happen.
Chair Stivlin, who wrote the contract? The contract is relatively amazing to me. Who wrote up the contract?
That was written by our lawyer, our district legal counsel.
At your direction?
I'm sorry, Jen, you're coming in and out with the sound, so I can't, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's okay. Sorry, Sarah. I was asking was it at your direction or both of your direction, or because I have no idea what's going on with this. So at whose direction, I guess, created the contract? Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna let Director Potacek go ahead. Do you have something you want to
Yeah,
respond?
what I'd say, Jen, I think to answer your question, the final document that was arrived at, and there were an awful lot of iterations of it, but who drafted most of the legalese that went into that were the two attorneys. And there were parts that were very, very different that started with, and the parties could not agree. And so they did not remain in the document.
We'll just go to Director Burns and then we'll go back to Jen.
But just to clarify, I assume that while the attorneys drafted the legalese, the business terms that are in there, the key ingredients, if you will, were directed by, I'm assuming, can you confirm this, by Director Potacek and Stivlin? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It was through ongoing conversation with the direction and advice of our lawyer on both sides. I think that is what took place, I assume. Did you have something, Jennifer?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering.
Director Pelletier?
Yep. Can you hear me okay? I hope.
Yep.
I hope. Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, in things change in the spirit of things. And I hear the comment by Superintendent Pontrelli that it wasn't entirely amicable. That's the way I take that. So I guess in the spirit of the 2,500 plus petition signatures, the unanimous letter of support from our principals, the incredible amount of teaching staff who have signed a letter, 400 and I believe 454 staff members signed a letter. In the spirit of us, just you previously stated that you believe in working together and whatnot. This is anything but. So I'm wondering if we've ever considered going back to the drawing board and actually showing the community that we do know how to do just that, put our money where our mouths are and actually try to work together. That is what we take the oath of office for. So I'm just wondering if you would consider having that kind of discussion, showing the community that we're leaders and we lead by example.
Director Riley?
Jen, I'm concerned about some of your verbiage and employee personnel data. I just want to caution you there.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think Shelley has
Director
a comment.
Pearson?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna read a couple paragraphs that I typed up to try to give some clarity whether it matters or not. I think for me, I ran for the school board because I care deeply about kids, because I'm not at all interested in the status quo for our kids, because I wanted to see greater teacher empowerment and autonomy, because I believe the public should have a say in how the public schools are run, and because I believed we could be stronger together. My job is to represent the 68,000 voters in our district, which is what I have tried to do for the last 5.5 years. But now there's more hatred and anger and name calling and assumptions and all sorts of awful things that none of us should stand for. People are devouring each other, and it's hurting our communities, and it's hurting our kids. I'm 100% certain that we cannot keep going like this. Things continue to get worse instead of better. I do understand the difficulty of separating during a pandemic and the need for greater equity work in our schools. I do not make any decision because of a personal vendetta or to see revenge. My decision is based on my desire to see everyone be able to work in partnership because I believe we are better together. And because I believe our school district is successful when all of our students are successful. I hear you, Director Pelletier and Director Burns. Unfortunately, I feel like we're past the ability to do that in the current capacities. There have been many opportunities to change course, but it has continued to get worse instead of better. As someone who seeks peace, it takes a lot for me to get to this place. But I heard a story a couple years ago of a married couple that was struggling and trying desperately to stay together for the sake of their kids. But in the end, it was hurting their kids. I hate separation, but our kids are hurting and our community is hurting, and we just can't continue in this way. It's not healthy for any of us, and we all need to be in a place that's healthy for all of us.
Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion and we have a second. Are we ready to vote? Director Pelletier?
Just one last thing, just to correct, I believe Director Potacek kind of already alluded to who.
Oh, it's a goofy night for the internet for some reason. People keep getting frozen up.
Yeah, Jen, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
That was given to us
Yeah.
by a community member, and I just want to say that I think everyone is working with the administration except for this board. I'm finished.
Jen, can you go back to the beginning of what you said? Because I think we missed it because you're frozen.
All right. Thanks, Shelley. I was saying, I think that Director Potacek had already exposed the employee A, and I also wanted to state that we have had the opportunity to have a $20,000 grant by the Whitson Fund to explore mediation and how we can get along with our administration. It is my opinion that pretty much everyone in this community is able to collaborate, work together, and come to adult conversations and conclusions, except for us on the board.
Any other comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Anything? People, are we good? Can you hear me? Mark Burns?
Thank you. I just want to validate all the voices that we have heard over the last week. We have heard from hundreds and hundreds of people through email. We've seen a petition from thousands. I want to validate the expressions made by our teachers, by our principals. They are meaningful. We need to listen to those voices. So I want to validate the efforts and the expressions that have been made by so many people in our district and our community. They are very important.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I would agree. I think we're ready to vote. Sherry?
Director Burns,
No.
Director Pearson,
Yes.
Director Pelletier,
No.
Director Potacek,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Chair Stivland,
Yes.
Director Weisberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you, Sherry. At this time, I have a statement to make. This was a joint statement that was agreed on by both parties. After serving the Stillwater area schools for 5 years, Denise Pontrelli has agreed to a separation agreement with the Stillwater Area School Board. Superintendent Pontrelli wishes to extend her gratitude to the students, staff, and community for their partnership to create improved learning systems for all. The district expresses its gratitude to her and to her leadership for the past 5 years. I would also like to, as Director Burns said a few minutes ago, I would also like to acknowledge, honor, and embrace the incredible outpouring of kind words and support that we have heard over the past few days for Superintendent Pontrelli. There is no doubt that there are many reasons for us to be thankful for her leadership. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to let us know how you feel. We do hear you. We understand that this is hard. It's not easy for any of us. And we really are looking forward to moving forward together. Thank you. With that, we can move on to our board member reports. The first item is the board chair report. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge also another voice that we've been hearing a lot from in the last few weeks, and that is the one that is coming from our students and some of our former students and our community members who are sharing their incredibly painful stories of racial bias and equity issues in our district. I too care very much about these things, and I think that the board needs to work together with our district leaders to make sure that we are addressing the issues that we have in our district. And I would like to make sure that we can say that every single student is enjoying a safe and fair and just learning environment every single day. And so I think we have a lot more work to do. And I look forward to continuing to do that work. And that's all I have to say about that. So we can move on to our working group reports. Do we have any working group reports at this point? Director Potacek?
Yes, what I'd like to do is, and I think it's an appropriate time, I want to segue into what you said. And tomorrow is the deadline for any board members who are interested in attending the Reimagining Education in the midst of COVID-19. And that's being sponsored by AMSD. And I'll just give you very briefly, this will be school board members, superintendents, and other district administrators will come together on June 17th for an interactive virtual conference to share the lessons learned from distance learning and also examine what we can do to realize the imperative in the Reimagined Minnesota Collection Action Plan, ensuring an equitable and excellent education for each and every Minnesota student. And the agenda will include a keynote address from the Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. But again, any board member who's interested, administrator rather, needs to register. Tomorrow is the deadline.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have a report that they'd like to share for their working groups? Do we have community engagement or finance?
Yeah, I can share for finance a couple things. We met today. Spoke with John Perry today, and there is a project that it was in the works using our school safety grant of $300,000. And it was for actually their door prop sensors that they are going to go back out and solicit more bids for. And he thought that maybe about 30 doors. Hope I got that right, John. We talked about the budget, which we covered today, and then also John Tyne, we discussed a little bit about the Stagecoach terminal contract. They're in the middle of negotiations right now. They're trying to, I don't know, trying to lease the whole property because they're offering a portion of the property apparently, and it sounds like the MTN has hired almost the entire staff that Mid Central had, and that's all I have for finance.
Okay, thank you. Legislative, do we have anything?
Yes, I think of most importance is AMSD reported this information, but others as well, is that the Governor Walz has announced that he will convene a special session of the legislature tomorrow, June 12th at 12 p.m. Part of his announcement included that his priorities will be to pass police reform and accountability and build a stronger and more equitable economy. So those were some of the big ones, and I stay tuned.
Very good. Thank you. And policy? Anything you want to share?
No, we have a policy meeting coming on Tuesday, June 16th.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Are there any board member reports? All right. Shelley, do you have something?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Bear with me just a moment. I have two things. And first, I want to speak to our students and alumni of color and their parents who bravely shared their hearts with the board. The last several weeks have rocked the entire nation, but I understand now more clearly how much it has rocked your world for much longer. There's plenty I don't know, have never experienced, and didn't even know was happening. And I'm sorry for that. I'm seeking to understand, to listen, and learn, and I've always wanted what is best for every student, and for every student to get what they need to be successful. And I want our students to be comfortable who they are in their school. I'm sorry that some have not had those things, and I'm sorry I didn't know what was happening. I do welcome conversations with each of you so that I can better understand. You do matter, and you do make us better. The second thing is that I shared earlier why I ran for this board. And when I ran, I knew I'd be sacrificing time with my family and that I would be in the public eye in everything I do. But I was okay with that because I wanted us to be better. While I can take the name calling and other things people have said about me, I am not willing to have that happen to my children because of my position on the board. I feel like we're in a place now where students have been turned against the board, and teachers that I highly respect that my kids may have are angry with the board, and I can't any longer serve in this position. I hate to quit anything, but time with my family is too short, and my desire to protect my children is too great to continue. I plan to officially resign from the board at the July 23rd, 2020 meeting. I apologize to fellow board members that I did not tell you beforehand. And I apologize that I know it will add more to your plate. I'm committed to do what is needed to help with the transition, all the transitions that need to happen in the meantime.
Thank you. Director Riley.
Shelley, I'm sorry to hear. I do understand. We've gone through our own situations ourselves within the school district, and it's been a really rough ride. And I can sympathize and empathize with what you're experiencing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Pelletier.
Guess I don't really know what to say. I was thinking you were gonna decline working group reports as well as board reports. I am going to finish with, I will not deviate from my love for this district. This is the best district, the oldest district in the state of Minnesota, period. And this moment in time will not define us. It never will define us. We will rise above this moment and we'll be better for it. I'm finished.
Thank you for that. I agree with you. And I'm really sorry to hear this from you, Shelley. And I look forward to further conversation with you after the meeting. And I just don't know what to say right now. Director Potacek?
Yes, first of all, Shelley, I'm also disappointed. I understand. I think what you're experiencing, what Tina has experienced, perhaps what Jennifer and others have experienced, is serving on the board takes a tremendous amount of resiliency. And I think that this is way above and beyond anything that I've seen in the 12 years that I've been on the board.
It's been very hard.
It has.
I don't want it to be so hard. Yeah.
Perhaps we could adjourn.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.